The Passover or Easter, the Lamb of Elohim or the Easter Bunny. Do bunnies even lay egg? Is Good Friday to Sunrise Sunday equal 3 days and 3 nights? Who can count to 3? The Messiah commanded us to remember his death. Easter Sunday is just as pagan and false as Christmas. Neither are in the scriptures or Bible. For those who are spiritually aware, it should be clear that we are living in the last days. In these times, the most important thing is to show our love and devotion to our heavenly Abba, choosing him over the world. We must return to living set apart as he desires, rejecting the ways of this world, keeping his commandments, and following his word. Christianity has promoted the idea that man can worship Elohim as we see fit, creating traditions that override Elohim's word. Many follow these man-made doctrines, believing they are acceptable when they are not. We will ultimately be judged based on whom we choose to follow, man or our Abba in heaven. We are now in a time of division between those who come to Yahuah through genuine faith and those who approach him through religious man-made traditions. My goal is to represent true faith and encourage others to live according to the word, not man-made doctrines. This week's lesson is critical because the topic of Passover is highly significant. Many of the elect remnant of Elohim are now beginning to awaken and understand their identity and the importance of aligning with the word. I want to ensure that Passover is clearly understood. Those who recognize the times should make every effort to honor this sacred appointed feast, while others who claim to love Yahuah instead celebrate a pagan fertility festival called Easter, falsely labeled as the Christian Passover, which actually stems from an ancient pagan festival honoring the moon goddess Ishtar Astarte. Despite this, Christians worldwide celebrate pagan Easter while ignoring what the scriptures actually say. This distinction further separates the true followers of Mashiach from the false, the wheat versus the tares. Passover is especially important this year as we approach times of great tribulation. It is crucial to show our Abba our commitment and obedience to his word. The true festival of Passover, Pesach, found in the scriptures, honors the true and living Elohim and our Messiah, Yahusha, whereas Easter is never commanded in scripture except where it is mistakenly inserted in some translations of Acts in place of Passover. As we prepare to celebrate Passover, it is essential to reflect on its meaning. 1 Corinthians chapter 5 verses 7 through 8 says, "Purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even Messiah our Passover is sacrificed for us. Therefore let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth." Matthew chapter 12 verse 40 says, "For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verses 25 through 26 says, "After the same manner also he took the cup, when he had supped, saying, This cup is the New Testament in my blood. This do ye as oft as ye drink it in remembrance of me. For as often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, ye do show the sovereign's death till he come." Regarding the date of this festival, while many are observing Passover on April 12th, this follows the influence of modern-day Judaism. In the time of Yahusha, the Pharisees and Sadducees followed the Greek lunar calendar. The lunar calendar is an ancient Greek calendar called the Metonic cycle. It was founded by a Greek astronomer called Meton of Athens, of 5th century BC, and forced on the Israelites in the time of the Maccabees by Antiochus IV Epiphanes. The same basis of this lunar calendar is used today by those practicing Judaism as believers who have divorced ourselves from man-made traditions and religions, now having returned back to covenant with our heavenly Abba. I do not believe we should conform to their practices, so I will not be celebrating it on that date. After much prayer and seeking guidance, Kingdom Covenant Heirs Truth and Repentance Ministries follows the Enochian Zadokite priestly calendar found in Qumran within the Dead Sea Scrolls, which places Passover on April 3rd, 2025 on your Gregorian calendar, which is the 14th day of the biblical first month of Abib. We will be partaking of the Passover and celebrating the Feast of Unleavened Bread beginning April 3rd at sundown. which begins the 15th day of the month of Abib. If others choose a different date, that is their decision, and I do not judge them for it. I believe our Abba understands the difficulties we face and knows we are doing our best with the knowledge available to us. The key focus is about the meaning and purpose of the Feast of Passover itself. Shabbat Shalom, Mishpacha. Shabbat Shalom. Hope everybody is doing well. All right, we're going to go ahead and open up in prayer. If all hearts and minds are clear. Rukata Yahuah. Shabbat Shalom, Almighty Elohim. Total Rabbah Abiyah for this beloved Shabbat Day, O Yahuah. Thank you, Father Yah, for the breath of life that's in our bodies, O Yahuah, to be able to come before you on this beloved day and exalt you and esteem you for who you are, Mighty Elohim. For truly you are the one true and living Elohim, and there is none else, Almighty Yah. You are the great architect of the universe, the omnipotent, omnipresent, covenant-making and covenant-keeping Elohim of our fathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Father, we just humble ourselves in your presence, giving honor to you and your beloved Son, Yahushua Mashiach, our King and High Priest, and also the Ruach HaKodesh that leads us and guides us in all truth and seals us into the day of redemption, Almighty Elohim. Father, we just thank you for all your goodness and your faithfulness, all your provisions, your mercy, your grace, and your favor that you show towards us each and every day, Abba Yah. We thank you for sustaining us, O Yahuwah, providing all things that we need that we go out without, Almighty Elohim. And Father, we also thank you for staying away the hand of death from our lives throughout these 7 days, O Yahuwah, allowing us to even enter into this new year, Almighty Elohim, this beloved set apart day to esteem you and to rest from the toils of our hearts and our minds and the things of this world, to be able to reflect on the things of you and your kingdom, Father, and rest and be nourished, O Yahuwah, by your spirit, Almighty Elohim. We're just grateful and thankful, Abba Yah. Father, we just humble ourselves in your presence, asking that you please forgive us for any iniquities, any sins, any transgressions that we have committed against you, Abba Yah, be it consciously or unconsciously. We just ask that you would purify our hearts, our minds, our souls, our spirits in you, and help us to have contentment, peace, and rest in you. Pray as we open your word today, O Yahuwah, that you will minister to our hearts, that you will fill us with your wisdom, knowledge, and understanding from on high, that we may know you even more intimately, O Yahuwah. And even as we prepare, Father Yah, for these set apart Moedim, O Yahuwah, your set apart feasts, that we would examine our hearts, O Yahuwah, and walk circumspect before you, Abba Yah, preparing ourselves to come before you on your beloved appointed times, mighty Elohim. And we just pray you continue to give us insight, Father. Continue to lead us and guide us in the path that we ought to go, Yahuwah. Continue to purge us from anything contrary to your nature, Yahuwah, that we may be one in spirit with you, Almighty Elohim, and that our vessels may be set apart without spot, without blemish, Father, that you are looking for as your set apart bride, O Yahuwah. And Father, we just pray for all Israel scattered throughout the four corners, striving for righteousness, that you continue to bless them and increase them on this beloved day, Father. Those who may be asleep, that you awaken them up to your set apart righteousness, O Yahuwah. And those who may have strayed, Father, they return in sincerity and wholehearted, Father Yah, unto you. And we just pray, Father, that you preserve them, O Yahuwah. And we just pray for anyone that may be battling any strongholds, Father Yah, anyone that needs healing, Father. We just pray that you touch them, on Yahuwah, that you will break every yoke, break every chain and stronghold over their lives, Almighty Elohim, and that they be healed and restored to perfect health and wellness in you, Almighty Yah, from their head to their feet, Father. We just pray for your restoration, Father Yah, and your deliverance upon your people, even in this time and in this hour, Father, and that we would be pillars of light in this world of darkness, O Yahuwah, that we would stand firm for you and your word, O Yahuwah, and move in the power and the things that you have given us to do in this earth, Almighty Yah, that you may be esteemed and exalted, and that a harvest of souls will be won for your kingdom, Almighty Elohim. Father, we just thank you and we just praise you and we just give you all esteem and honor. And we just pray that your will be done on earth as it is in Shemayim forevermore. In Yahusha's name. Hallelujah. Amen. Amen. All right, family. So today we're just going to be rehearsing, right? Going over review since Pesach is right around the corner. And we've entered into the new year, and Yahuwah's appointed times are now set for the year. And the first Moedim that we are coming up to is the Pesach. All right. So we're just going to go over some things and review some things to refresh our hearts in this time and in this season. All right. This is Yahuwah's visitation and fulfilling his promise to the children of Israel. Okay, so we know that, just some background, it was a time of famine, in the land of Canaan and amongst even the regions of those countries around them, even Mizraim, Egypt. And Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers before this, right? And he was dwelling in the land of Mizraim. And Yahuwah used his gifts to help Pharaoh with the dreams he was having and what it meant on how he would be able to save his nation from the famine. By doing this, Yahusha for Joseph rose into power and he became the right hand of the Pharaoh at that time. Once his brothers found out that he was alive and that he had this power and authority as the right hand, Joseph invited his family to come up to Egypt so they could be preserved from the famine, because through him helping Pharaoh's dream, helped Pharaoh to be able to have a whole bunch of grain stored that would feed not only his nation, but supply even the nations around, right, during this time of drought of 7 years of famine. Okay, because they stored up 7 years of plenty while the Elohim had warned them what was to come. So they come into in the land of Egypt and Mizraim, and they are prospering as a nation. Israel becomes a nation in the land of Egypt, right? They prosper, they multiply. And then in the middle of this, this prosperity of Israel, a new Pharaoh arises who does not know Yahusha for Joseph, and they bring them into bondage because they were multiplying and becoming a great nation. And they feared that Israel would then turn against them and fight against them with their enemies. And the Egyptians felt some type of way about Israelites because we were shepherds people, right? We were shepherds men, and they don't really deal with livestock and stuff like that. So there was a kind of barrier between us and them. All right. So we'll talk about that as we get into it. But this is some hieroglyphics, even in the land of Mizraim and Egypt, showing the Hebrews as slaves. As you can see, these are melanated people, not the European ones that they portray on the movies that have you thinking that those are Egyptians, when really the Egyptians were Hamitic lineage, right? Which Ham means the dark faces, those of the dark burnt face, right? So we see that the Hamites, or Mizraim, is a descendant from Ham, and the Egyptians and the Israelites look similar, right? Even Shaul says he was mistaken for an Egyptian, right? Because the Egyptians and Israelites favored, but there's a distinction between the people. Prelude to Pesach is a promise from Yahuwah, right? And the promise is about Yahuwah coming to visit his people. Now we understand that when Yahuwah comes visits, right, he's either coming to redeem, coming to change some things, or he's coming to bring judgment, right? So when we see visitations, these are the two things that Yahuwah does if he coming to visit you. Things are going to change. And so we open up here in Shemot, or Exodus chapter 2, verse 23. And we're going to see what caused Yahuwah to come and visit his people. Let's look at Shemot 2 and 23.
And it came to be after these many days that the servant of Mizraim died, and the children of Yasha all groaned because of the slavery, and they cried out, and they cried came up to Elohim because of the slavery.
And so they've been going through hard bondage, right? And through this hard bondage, the only one that they can turn to and plead to is Yahuah Elohim, the power and the source of all power for the nation of Israel. So there was groanings. This is what they was doing. They was crying out to Elohim, causing Yahuwah's ear to draw near, if you will, right? Let's look at verse 24.
And Elohim heard the groaning, and Elohim remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Yaakov.
Cain, right? So notice this groaning and this crying caused Yahuwah to remember something, right? It causes Elohim to hear, and he remembers not those in the religion of Judaism or religion of Christianity or religion of Islam. but those who he made a covenant with. Okay. The covenant he made with our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Okay. So notice there's a covenant and an oath that Yahuwah has to, make good on. And knowing that he promised these great things to our forefathers and seeing the condition that Israel is in, they're crying and they're groaning, cause him to remember this and to come visit them to fulfill the prophecies. So notice we in captivity, and many of us today don't have a spirit of crying and groaning for Elohim to come redeem us from a place. Many of us today, they not trying to cry out to Yah. They want their own part or piece of the pie, if you will, right? They want to find their own position or place in captivity that's respected by their oppressors, instead of crying out to Yah to judge the oppressors and to bring them out of the place. So bondage or some type of oppression in such a way will have to cause Israel to not be comfortable, right? To where they're crying out and don't want to be among their oppressors. And that's what we're going to see coming in the future, right? Because again, history repeats itself. So we see Israel is in a spiritual bondage more today than a physical bondage, because we have slaves who can travel anywhere they want to today, right? They can get a passport, they can go wherever they want to. So it's not this physical bondage that we see, but it's a spiritual, mental bondage that our people are in. And Yah's gonna have to break that bondage, right? And it's gonna have to cause some type of ways to make people uncomfortable and not having all the pleasures and the things that keep them distracted in the land of captivity. So we have to understand that Yahuwah used Pharaoh, right, to open up the eyes of the children of Israel and those that wanted to sojourn with them. So uh, Pharaoh is a tool in Yahuwah's hand, and he's the tool that is used to cause the people to want to draw to Elohim to redeem them and for Yahuwah to show his esteem or his glory. Let's look at Shemot or Exodus 5, verse 1.
And afterwards Moshe and Aaron went in and said to Pharaoh, Thus says Yahuah Elohim of Yashar, let my people go, so they celebrate a festival to me in the wilderness.
So Moshe and Aaron is the mouthpiece of Elohim unto Pharaoh, right? At the prophecy, Yah. And we see that this saying, Yahuwah said, let his people go that they may celebrate a festival in the wilderness. So notice the first feast day that we have is the Pesach, and it's not actually in the land of Israel, right? It's actually in the wilderness. So for people to say that, you can't celebrate the feast outside of the land, when the first feast days that we kept for 40 years, it was outside of the land, right? So see that this is the purpose for Elohim to bring them out to his appointed time. So notice his appointed time is approaching, and he wants to redeem his people so they can show up at his appointed time for his fulfillment of prophecies that he's promised our forefathers. Verse 2.
And Pharaoh said, Who is Yahuwah that I should obey his voice to let Yashar go? I do not know Yahuwah, nor I am going to let Israel go.
Well, there it is. So now Pharaoh is saying, look, I don't know this Elohim, right? I know I'm Elohim on earth. That's what he thinks, right? And he has other powers that gives him power. But Yahuwah, he has not known. Elohim of the Hebrews has been silent for some generations now. Remember that the people have been in Egypt. And so now Yahuwah is about to show his esteem and his glory and let Pharaoh know who, Yahuwah is. So now this is Yahuwah's opportunity to say, oh, I'm going to show you who I am. Y'all going to know who I am at the end of this. So this is where Yahuwah allows Pharaoh's heart to grow hard so he can show him who he really is. So this is where we start to see the plagues and the mighty wonders that took place in Mizraim to redeem the children of Israel, Yahuwah's people. So look at Exodus chapter 7, verse 5.
And the Mizrahites shall know that I am Yahuwah, when I stretched out my hand on Mizraim, and I shall bring the children of Yashar out from among them.
So notice he said when he stretches his hand on Mizraim, right? So he's going to put his hand on Mizraim for them to know who he is, right? And this type of hand he's putting on them is in a nice hand. This is a disciplined hand, right? To show them something. So notice when Yahuwah comes to visit a place, this is about judgment. No, it's always about judgment. The day of visitation is about judgment. Now, this judgment could be good or bad, right? If you were upright and righteous, then it's a great day of, liberty, freedom, deliverance, and abundance for you, right? But if you on the other side of it, this is a bad thing. You about to get a recompense for any evil or wrong you've been doing. So this is Yahuwah's visitation, and he's visiting his people and the Egyptians. Okay, and he's about to stretch out his hand on Egypt, which means judgment. Exodus 7 and 17.
Thus said Yahuwah, by this you know that I am Yahuwah. See, I am striking the waters which are in the river with the rod that is in my hand, and they shall be turned to blood.
So came, right? So notice he's saying this is how you're going to know that I am Yahuah Elohim, because I have power over all the elements and all the things of this earth, of this world, right? He's called the self-existing one. He exists outside of time. He's self-existing. Nothing is keeping him alive. He is the source of all power and all life, right? So he's letting you know, you're going to know that I am the one who is self-existing and rules over the elements and powers of the earth. So I want y'all to know every attack against the nation of Egypt or Mizraim, he's attacking the very things that they, hold dear and worship, right? They worship other mighty ones for these resources of the land that keep them fertile and fruitful. And Yahuwah is about to show if I come against any of your mighty ones, they're going to fall and bow down. And this is why he's first is taking their prized possession, which is the now. This is their source of life. Okay. And they worship a mighty one who they believe gives them access to this source of life. And Yahuwah is letting them know that I'm coming to judge the nation of Egypt or Mizraim and the mighty ones, the gods of Egypt that watched them oppress my people and gave them even, support in oppressing my people. Shemot 8 and 22.
And in that day I shall separate the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, so that you know that I am Yahuwah, the midst of the land.
So, initially when the children of Israel came, Pharaoh invited the children of Israel because they are the relatives of Yahusha. And Pharaoh favored Yahusha and said, yes, bring your family. I'm gonna give them the best of the land, in Goshen and Egypt where they can herd and have their flocks and everything. And they became a great nation there. But then the new Pharaoh comes up and they hate the prosperity of the Hebrews, the Israelites. And now they're plotting to kill them, destroy them, put them in bondage, kill off their little ones, their sons, so that they can depopulate the nation. Because of this, Yahuwah is remembering all the things that they have done against his people, and he's coming to bring a recompense. And he's showing how there's a distinction between you and my people, and I'm gonna make sure you know the distinction. Okay. Okay, so he's letting you know, I'm gonna show you that I'm Yahuwah Elohim, where I can cause all this to happen to you while nothing happens to my people. Why I make a distinction and separation from who I am and my people are from you. Because none of the other powers had this type of dominion or power in that way, where they can make distinction and separate what can happen in a certain area from happening to everyone. Because they went to Elohim's for the source of rain, for growth of crops, for all this stuff, and it was all in a universal type of way, not separating from, hey, I can cause this place to have this and then you not have this, right? So he's letting you know, like, I rule over all this stuff here. So this is where he comes with the swarm of flies and all these things. And Goshen is known as the ancient place of what they call Avaris today, from the land of Goshen. It's known as the place of Avaris in Egypt, and is bordering the land of Israel. Okay, so it's not far. You just walk and you can walk from there into Israel. This is where the Israelites went to dwell and sojourn in the land of Egypt during the time of the famine. It's also called Ramses, right? Ramses, the city of Ramses, I think it was Ramses the second. He built he built his city over Goshen, right? Later on in history in the New Kingdom, in the early kingdom and old kingdom during the Middle Bronze Age period. This is when the children of Israel dwelt in Goshen and them and their family, and they became a great nation there. Let's look at Isaiah 37 and 18,
Truly, Yahuwah, the servant of Asher, hath laid waste all the lands in their land,
verse 19.
and have put their mighty ones into the fire, for they were not mighty ones, but the work of men's hands, wood and stone, and they destroyed them. And now, O Yahuwah, our Elohim, save us from his hand so that all the reigns of the earth know that you are Yahuwah, you alone.
Okay, so notice this salvation is not just for his people to be redeemed, but it's for all people to know who Yahuwah is. He's doing this so his name can ring bells all over the earth so they can know that he's a distinct mighty one from all other mighty ones. And even at this time, the people was worshiping wood and stone, which wasn't mighty ones at all, right? But we know Egypt had mighty ones outside of wood and stone. They had actual principalities that gave them power to be able to do even certain miracles that Moshe was doing. So notice that you have both of these things going on. You have these other mighty ones that are the rebellious sons of El, and then you have the people when Nimrod came and introduced idolatry of wood and stone and making veneration to objects. They're saying Yahuwah redeem us, save us from the hand of Ashur, right? Or the king of Assyria, if you will, right? And let them know that your kingdom, you reign supreme on the earth. You alone are the mighty Elohim above all Elohims. Look at Yeshayahu 60, verse 15.
Instead of you being forsaken and hated, so that no one passes through you, I shall make you an everlasting excellence, a judge of many generations.
So even though you've been oppressed and people look at you as a forsaken people because of the punishment that you went through, he's saying that if you return back to him, he's gonna make you an everlasting excellence, a joy of many generations. So our restoration is in repentance and returning back to the covenant of Yahuwah, and he's gonna fulfill his promise on his end. Isaiah 60, verse 16.
And you shall suck the milk from the nations, and shall suckle the breast of servants. And you shall know that I, Yahuwah, your Savior, and your Redeemer, Almighty, I am the Almighty One of Yaakov.
The mighty one of Yaakov. So he's letting you know, and when I deliver you, right, this is how you get to know me, right? By when I deliver you, I set you apart from the nations, and I cause the nations to become your inheritance, if you will, right? To where they serve you. So he's letting you know, I'm gonna redeem you from this low state that you will fall into, and I'm gonna bring you to your rightful state in the earth. So he always wants to show how great he is. So Israel can have confidence in their Elohim and not be crying, but actually, walking in authority, knowing the power that they hold if they are cleaving to him in his covenant. But all I want y'all to understand that it's not just about Israel. You see, Israel is just the firstborn, but he wants all nations to recognize who he is because all nations belong to him. Ezekiel 38 and 18.
And it shall be on that day, on the day when God comes against the land of Yasharel, declares the Master, Yahuwah, that my wrath shall come up in my face.
So this is going to be again in the end times where Yahuwah is going to make his name great again because the nations have forgotten who he is, right? They don't know the true Elohim. So he's about to make his grand entrance and he's going to use Gog and Magog, which is, today, modern day, Russia and China will be a superpower in the end times. They're going to unite and come together. And they're going to be an innumerable, multitude. Okay. Um, and this is where Yahuwah is going to make an example out of them. Ezekiel 38 and 22.
And I shall judge him with pestilence and blood,
Mhm.
and rain down flooding rain, and hailstone, fire, and sulfur on him, and on his bands, and on the many peoples who are with him.
So y'all see what he's doing, right? This is Ezekiel 38, 18, and verse 22. And he's letting you know that he's going to do the same kind of wonders and judgments like he was doing in Mizraim against this oppressive nation that's trying to destroy or oppress his people. Okay? He's going to cause fire to come down from heaven, fire and sulfur, hailstones, and all these different things, pestilence, right? Ezekiel 38, 23.
And I shall exalt myself and set myself apart, and I shall be known in the eyes of many nations, and they shall know that I am Yahuwah.
There it is. So when Yahuwah exalts himself and sets himself apart from any other mighty one, so there's none like him. They can't do what he does, right? He says, then I'm gonna be known in the eyes of all the nations. They're going to know that he is Yahuah Elohim. So notice when he brings judgment, when he's judging nations, he judges with pestilence, disease, blood, hailstorms, rain, floodings, all these things, fire and sulfur, right? That comes down, or what we call meteorites today or so forth. Right? All this is how he judges nations. So Gog is about to get this judgment in these end times, right? And notice that also he's doing this not just to destroy the rebellious nation, but so all other nations can know that he is the supreme power because he wants to gain all these nations. All right, we know Israel is the firstborn, but there's other sons also that are called by his name. And this is how he wants to redeem or have this harvest in the end, if you will, of harvesting the earth. But this happens when the nation of Israel cleaves to Yah and really wants Yah to come in and intervene, right? They really want their Redeemer, their Savior, the one who where their power comes from, to come and stand for them. But it usually happens when they're getting oppressed. When everything's going good, it seems like Israel forsakes Yahuwah. And they start wanting to be like the nations and mingle with them. And then the nations who hate them oppress them and treat them horrible. And then they come crying to Yah, he got to go, redeem them from doing the wrong thing they was doing from the first place he warned them about. So it's been a pattern with Israel. And this is the last go round in these end times that this is going to happen because Israel now has to become mature. They can no longer be children, just, going to and fro, doing the same thing and not maturing and growing and become who they're supposed to be. Let's look at Bereshit. Let's look at Genesis 50, verse 24.
And Joseph said to his brothers, I am dying. But Elohim shall certainly visit you and bring you out of this land, of the land of which he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob.
Cain, right? So notice they have already are anticipating Yahuwah coming to visit them because Prophet Joseph, right? Already had told them that Yahuwah is going to visit you when I'm long gone and dead. And when he visits you, he's going to redeem you out of this place. And when you leave this place, make sure you take my bones and bury them in the land of our forefathers.
And Joseph made the children of Israel swear, saying, Elohim shall certainly visit you, and you shall bring up my bones from here.
And now this place I told you called Avaris, right? In Mizraim, which was known as Goshen in the time of Joseph and them. They found the place where the Israelites dwelled and all these Shemitic, burials and bones where people died there. And they had the royal house where Jacob was and the 12 patriarchs was there, and they found the tombs. A royal tomb amongst the 12 tombs was Joseph's tomb, and his tomb had no bones in there. When the children of Israel did leave, they did take the bones of Joseph and buried him in the land of Canaan amongst his forefathers. So we see this visitation is about redemption, right? And it's about judgment. Let's look at Shemot 4, verse 31.
And the people believed, and they heard that Yahuwah had visited the children of Yeshua, and that he had looked on their affliction, and they bowed their heads and did obedience.
Cain, right? So notice they heard that Yahuwah had visited the children of Yasharal, right? And Yahuwah was looking on their affliction, and now he's about to repay judgment. So he's coming to redeem his people, but he's also bringing justice for whatever trespasses that was done against his people. And even when we go over the signs, right? When he's having Moshe do to Israel to let them know that Yahuwah has visited Moshe and that he's coming to redeem them. These signs are also letting Israel know that, look, I've seen your affliction, right? It has to do with all their affliction, these signs that Yahuwah gave Moshe to show to the children of Israel. All right. John 17, let's look at Yahuchanan 17, verse 21.
So they all might be one, as you, Father, are in me, and I in you, so that they too might be one in us, so that the world might believe that you have sent me.
So notice Moshe was sent to the children of Israel as a redeemer, and through the signs and wonders they believed and knew that, oh, Yahuwah has visited us. He's heard our cries and our prayers, right? He's come to redeem us. So Moshe was a picture of Mashiach. And Mashiach now he's coming in the flesh to redeem you from bondage, but this bondage is sin and oppression. Right? There was a physical bondage that he redeemed Israel out of, but the root of the matter is the sinful bondage in man, right? So Mashiach came to do that first, and then he's gonna ultimately, redeem his people from the hand of their oppressors throughout the four corners of the earth. There's always been a mediator between man and Elohim, and Mashiach is the mediator of the covenant. He's the high priest of the covenant between us and the Father. John 17:23.
I in them and you in me, so that they might be perfect into one, so that the world knows that you have sent me and have loved them as you have loved me.
So notice that. So when Israel becomes one and walking in perfection, answering the call and the purpose that they are been ordained to, then the world will know Yahuwah. The world will know Mashiach, who Yahuwah sent, because how we live amongst each other, how we walk in our purpose here. You see that? So that's the whole point of what Israel's here to do, is to bring back the sons of Adam back to Yahuwah Elohim and covenant with Elohim to restore that which was lost. All right. But Israel has to be redeemed first. He has redeemed his nation so the rest of the nations can be redeemed. All the whole world would know the glory of Yahuwah, right? To know that Yah has sent his messenger that he promised and that he loved them, solidifying Israel's position, but also to the nations as well, because remember it says that you will be my servant to raise up the tribes of Yaakov and also to be my salvation to the end of the earth, right? So he's gonna be his salvation to the world in a sense of redeeming nations. Because again, this starts from Adam all the way to where he chose to set apart people to bring everything back to the garden, right? So Israel is the firstborn tool or son that he's using, right, to redeem the rest of the sons of Adam from, again, the sin and trespass that began in the garden. But he has a set apart nation, right, that he's chosen to lead in doing this. So Mashiach has been sent, and he is perfecting Israel, right? We're going through a perfection so we can be used to be the head and no longer the tail and lead the nations. So the plan of redemption is from the Father to the Redeemer to the firstborn, then to the goyim or the nations that believe. So y'all see the order here is he can't deal with the nations until he deals with his own house first. So this is the plan of redemption from the Father to send his Redeemer, which is Yahusha HaMashiach, to save his people, his firstborn out of all the nations, which is Jacob, Israel, and then salvation to the Goyim or the nations, the sons of Adam that believe. So Yahuwah's plan of redemption he already had this plan from when Adam trespassed from the beginning. So it's the Father doing this to the Redeemer, which is Yahusha, that he sent to his firstborn, which is Israel, and then to the rest of the sons of Adam or the sons of Elohim that are called by his name among the Goyim, all right, that believe. Jeremiah or Yirmiyahu 23 verse 1.
Woe to the shepherds, destroying and scattering the sheep of my pasture, and declares Yahuwah.
Okay. So notice who has shepherds that's supposed to be shepherding or leading the flock of Israel, right? Pastors, if you will, today, right? But they're feeding themselves and not feeding Yahuwah's people. So there's a warning to the shepherds today, right? Who claiming to be shepherds or pastors who are destroying the sheep of Elohim. They're preying on the sheep of Elohim, robbing the sheep of Elohim, exploiting the sheep of Elohim, doing all these evil things against his sheep. He says, woe to you, because you're supposed to be leading and guiding them in the path of righteousness to green pastures, right? To remember the set apart place in the mountain of Elohim, but you leading them astray and you making merchandise out of them and oppressing them. You see that? He says, woe to you who are causing my sheep to be scattered and not be united or one together, right? Through false religions, doctrines of devils, division, and all these different things, and not the covenant of Elohim. Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu 23, verse 2.
Therefore, thus says Yahuah Elohim of Yeshua against the shepherds who feed my people. You have scattered my flock, driven them away, and have not visited tender them. See, I am punishing you for the evil of your deeds, declares Yahuwah.
So notice judgment comes to his house first. And I want y'all to know when he's judging Israel and the Israelites that have not repented, When you read the story in the Jasher and Jubilee and so forth, you find out that there were the Israelites that died too when these plagues happened that was not obeying Yahuwah. They got the same judgment the Egyptians got. Okay? So I want you to know his warning, he's even saying, hey, I'm coming to visit, but no, I'm dealing with my own house too. I'm dealing with my own house first. I'm gonna come to you first, right? And he's saying, woe to you shepherds, because you're not feeding Yahuwah's people the true bread of life. You're scattering his flock with false doctrines, doctrines of devils. You're driving them away from the truth, and you're not visiting them, tending to them, to lead them and guide them in a straight and narrow path. So he's saying, I'm punishing you for the evil of your deeds, declares Yahuwah, because he is against you, shepherds. They're driving the flock away, right? They're causing all kind of offenses against Yahuwah, against Torah, and having the sheep going scattered, wandering places they shouldn't be wandering. And nobody's going to visit them to bring them back into the fold. So we see that Yahuwah is going to he's punishing these pastors for doing these such things. Even now is a time also of judgment, right? Where Yahuwah is going to be again changing the guard, right? The people who've been in power and position leading the flock astray today, we even know that this is a time of judgment where Yahuwah is going to be exposing these leaders and these people that have all these sheep in these churches and all so forth, leading people astray, but using his word, using his book and claiming to be true shepherds when they have appointed themselves and was not sent by Elohim. And the ones that was sent that have not visited his people, that have driven them away, he says, I'm going to punish you for this. So notice Yahuwah is the great shepherd, and when his sheep is going through something, he hears their cry, he goes and visits them to bring them out of the situation. And he's raised up physical men as shepherds as well to be in his stead to do these things, and they've neglected their position or their purpose, right? Or they're handling it in the wrong way or misusing or abusing it. So he brings judgment. There's a time also where we read in the scripture where it talks about that I look for justice and judgment, and there was no one. So my right hand had to redeem for me, right? I had to send my right hand to do this, to redeem my people or to bring salvation myself. So notice he sets people up to represent him to do the work. But when they don't do that, he has to bring his shepherd, right? The one that's promised to come and restore all things. Let's look at Luke 1 and 67.
And Zechariah his father was filled with the set apart Ruach and prophesied, saying, Baruch be Yahuah Elohim Yasha'al, for he has visibly looked upon and worked redemption for his people.
Cain, right? So notice even when Mashiach is being born, right? This is Yahuwah visiting Israel because he's fulfilling a prophecy. He's remembering the covenant by doing these things. So that means this is a visitation. He's trying to work redemption. So visitation is working redemption or is bringing judgment, as we see. So notice what visiting means when Yahuwah comes and visits his people. From the beginning of the book, even to the Brit Hadashah, or the commonly called the New Testament, the Messianic writings, when he comes to visit, that means he's tending to his flock, right? He's coming to work the promises that he promised to the sheep. So he's saying that he's coming, he's seen them, he's heard their cries, and he's working redemption for his people. And he's sending, he always sends a redeemer, all right? Luke chapter 169.
And has raised up a horn of deliverance for us in the name of his servant David. And he spoke by the mouth of his set apart prophets from old. Deliverance from our enemies and from the hand of all those hating us.
So notice the promise of the covenant. Promises of the covenant is that he will send a redeemer, redemption for his people. He's going to raise up a horn of deliverance right out of the house of Daud or David, Judah. And he says this has been prophesied out of all the mouths of the prophets, right? That he will bring deliverance, to Israel. He will deliver them from their enemies or from the hand of all those that hate them, right? Because all the nations hate Israel. They despise Israel, verse 72. And what is he doing for them?
To show compassion toward our fathers,
Mhm.
and to remember his set apart covenant.
So notice mercy, grace is for our forefathers because he has remembered his set apart covenant that he made with our forefathers and he comes to fulfill that. So at a certain point in time, he always comes down to visit to see what the children of Israel are doing. And those who have a heart to turn back to him, he's granted them these things. Luke 1 and 73.
and those which he swore to our fathers Abraham.
There it is. And because he honors his oath to his friend Abraham, this is why he does it for the children of Israel. So if it wasn't for our forefathers Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, he would have been, left us alone because we went off, right? We forsaken him in the covenant, but because he made an oath to our forefathers that he had an intimate relationship with and honors them, right? He hasn't ultimately forsaken Israel, even though they've been rebellious. Okay, so notice these visitations is all about fulfilling the prophecies, the promises, and the oath that was made to our forefathers. And they recognized this. They were anticipating these things because they understood the scriptures. Zechariah, again, he was a priest of Elohim, right? A Zadokite priest. This was John the Baptist's father, right? So he was the first one to recognize this visitation and to prophesy about it. Let's look at Shemot 4 and 22.
And you shall say to Pharaoh, thus said Yahuah, Yahshua is my son, my firstborn.
Israel is my son, my firstborn. So the firstborn nation is Israel unto Yahuwah. Verse 23.
So I say to you, let my son go to serve me. But if you refuse to let him go, see, I am killing you, your sons, and your firstborn.
Do you see that? So an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Yahuwah is saying, look, man, you got the opportunity to just release my people, let them go to serve me. But if you refuse to let my son go, well, then guess what? I'm gonna have to kill your sons and your firstborn since you have mistreated my sons and my firstborn. Cain. So remember, he's seen the affliction of his son, his firstborn, and what they've been going through under Pharaoh's hand. He know how they've been killing the babies, throwing them into the Nile for the gators and everything to eat them and stuff like that. He's watched this. So he's telling them, no, look, you got a chance right now to let my children go. But if you don't, then I'm going to do exactly what you've done to my children, right? So he's letting you know I'm starting off killing your seed since you was killing my seed. So Israel's his son, his firstborn, and he tells you, let my son go. And I want y'all to understand that when we go into the scriptures, even in the prophecies, in Zechariah and so forth, and he talks about Egypt, my people, right? So notice Egypt is his people too originally. And when we go to where Egypt was, and when we go before Mizraim and Enoch and so forth, you see this region area Yahuwah was ruling over at one point. When Enoch was an emperor ruling over the sons of Adam, he ruled from Egypt, right? Where the Great Pyramid and all this stuff he was over this area and domain. So this land that we call Mizraim has always been rich in history and is also a focal point that Elohim has, and that's why he always brought his people to Egypt because he has a relationship with that land. All right. So what I want y'all to see also is that he's rebuking Pharaoh and telling him, look, if you refuse to do what I'm telling you, I'm going to now show you some repercussions for killing my sons when I kill yours. Leviticus 25:55. Let's read that real quick.
Because the children of Yahshua are servants to me. They are my servants, whom I brought out of the land of Mitzrayim. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim.
Now, y'all see this, right? So Yahuwah is like, look, I don't play about my children. Even to this day, he doesn't play about his children, especially those who are guarding his covenant. So he's saying they are my servants. Anyone who tries to come against my servants doing my work in the earth, guess what? I'm coming to bring judgment. You may think that you won this little move you just made on my people, but they're gonna win the war because I'm gonna come down and destroy it all, right? From the root. All right. And they're gonna be on top and you're gonna be at the bottom. So this is why the nations don't want you cleaving to the covenant of Elohim. They want you in religions and all this other stuff. Because if you identify with the true power, right, that is in covenant with you, then and that power is above all other powers over the earth, then that's a problem for the nations, right? That means everything they doing stops. And Israel now is on top and they become the rulers. So they will come together to make sure Israel is oppressed and at the bottom because they want to still be in power and reign over the earth. So you got to recognize who you are, Israel, and who your power is. So you forsake the nations and forsake their religions and all the things that they're offering, because this is not the way of salvation for you. This is not how you return back to your purpose and who you are supposed to be, as the kings and the rulers of the earth, to teach man how to walk with Elohim and walk in righteousness. All right. So he says, look, I'm the king over Israel. They are my servants, not yours. So you need to release them to me, right? I'm their rightful power. I'm their Elohim. I have jurisdiction over you because they are under my jurisdiction. I'm the sovereign of them, right? Isaiah Yeshayahu 44 verse 1.
But now hear, O Yaakov, my servant, and Yahshua, whom I have chosen.
Notice, who has chosen you? You are his servants. And I want y'all to understand that Mashiach also is considered the firstborn of Yahuwah's servant. He calls Yahusha his servant, messenger of the covenant. Right? He comes to do the works of Elohim and turning many people from iniquity, redeeming them from their sins. So he's considered the firstborn, the first begotten of Yahuwah that proceeded out of the Father. And he is born, he comes in the lineage of the firstborn nation on the earth, which is Israel. You see that? To fulfill the promises. So he had to go through the same things that Israel went through being firstborn. Okay. We understand that Yaakov is Yahuwah's servant and he's the chosen son, right? He is the promised seed, right? So Mashiach is also called the firstborn, right? And Yahuwah's servant as well. So notice there's a hierarchy even among us being the firstborn, right? Because there's firstborn within the firstborn, if you will. And he runs or he rules over the firstborn, right? So we see Mashiach. Let's look at Matthew chapter 2, verse 15, because he had to go through the same thing that Israel went through when he came in the flesh, all right? Matthew 2 and 15.
Remain there until the death of Herodes, to fill what was spoken by Yahuwah through the prophet, saying, out of Mizraim I have called my son.
There it is, right? So notice during the time of Mashiach's time, Israel is still under oppression. They're in their land, but they're not sovereign because they have other rulers over them. You have a Edomite king, King Herod ruling over them, and the Edomites, they were enemies to Yaakov, right? Even though they're supposed to be brothers. You've seen the Romans also over there, right? Which are enemies to the nation of Israel, okay? And they're oppressing Israel as well. So, they're going through oppression even in Mashiach's time, and that's why Yahuwah sent a redeemer, which was, the promised Mashiach to redeem them from their sins first, and then he's going to ultimately redeem them from the nations that hate them as well. So Yahuwah doesn't change. This is his ways of redemption, his plans of redemption. Notice when King Herod was trying to kill all the firstborn sons because he heard that the Messiah was going to be born out of Israel, right? So all the children he was killing because he didn't want his kingdom to be destroyed. So notice Mashiach flees to where? Mizraim, right? To Egypt. And then out of Egypt he is called to go and deliver his people. Just like the children of Israel went in, right, to Egypt, and then he raised up Moshe out of there to go redeem his people. So it's the same thing. We see the same cycle. Yahuwah doesn't change. And he's letting you know that Mashiach had to come that same way, right? He had to have the same type of experiences that his brothers had. Matthew 3 and 16. Matthew 3 and 16.
And having been immersed, Yahusha went up immediately from the water, and see the heavens of Shemaim were open. And he saw the Ruach Elohim descending like a dove and coming upon him. And see a voice out of the Shemaim saying, this is my son, the beloved in whom I delight.
So Yahuwah had to stamp and choose even Yahusha, just like he chose Israel, anointed Yahusha to do his work, just like he anointed the nation of Israel when we came in the covenant on Mount Sinai, right? And stamped us and spoke out of the cloud, just like he's speaking out of the cloud here to those right here at the immersion of Mashiach. He had to go through these things, the rites of passage, just like Israel had to. So this is Mashiach, right, being validated by Yahuwah. So notice he was immersed and anointed by a Zadokite priest, which was John or Yehukanan the Baptist. And Yahuwah now solidifies that this is my son, this is whom I've prophesied and said that I would send to redeem, the children of Israel. Okay. But he's showing Israel how to do it right, right? So they can be overcomers because they haven't been doing it right. They haven't been going through the process of perfection correctly. They start off going and they go astray. They don't complete the process. So Mashiach just came down and showed them how to complete this process of perfection, become sons of El, not little children that, don't have any kind of self-control and stable, right? He's calling you to grow to maturity, to become a son, all right, to have authority and to reign with Elohim. So he is the example that Yahuwah sent for us to follow. Yahweh 20:28.
Even as the son of Adam did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as ransom for me.
There it is. So Mashiach came to serve the sons of Adam, right? Starting with the nation, the firstborn of Elohim, Israel. Okay. So just as Israel is Yahuwah's servant, and firstborn, Mashiach is the firstborn of Elohim, and he's a servant also. Israel is a servant to the nations. We're supposed to be priests to the nations, right? But then within Israel, there are priests to us that serve Israel, like the Levites. And then there's another priesthood that's above them, which is the Melchizedek order. And this is where Mashiach comes from, right? And he is this high priest, if you will, and he's come to serve, to cleanse the nation and the priesthood of Israel. All right, and redeem them from their enemies. He didn't come to be served. So us who are followers of Mashiach, we're here to serve. We're here to do the works that Yahuwah purposed us to do so we can have a harvest of souls upon his return. Because remember, we were supposed to be first to the nation of Israel and then to the Goyim or the Gentiles, the sons of Adam, preaching this salvation and this good news of deliverance. Okay. So he gave his life for a ransom to redeem people from their sins, okay? Because they owed a great debt that they couldn't pay. So we see all of this is about servitude. Everybody is serving in their rightful order and rightful position. Yahuchanan chapter 6:38.
Because I have come down out of the Shemaim to heaven, not to do my own will desire, but the will desire of him who sent me.
So notice he's setting himself apart here, showing like, look, I'm anointed. I was set apart by Yahuwah and sent by Yahuwah. I came down from heaven. Nobody else would say that there. I came down from heaven. Everybody's born the same way everybody else is born, right? He's saying, like, I came down from heaven, not to do my own will, but the will of him that sent me. I'm here on a mission, a purpose. I'm not just here going through the motions, right? Cain. And this is what Israel's purpose was, right? As a priestly nation was to do the will of Elohim and not their own will, right? And because they were supposed to be sent to the nations, but they didn't fulfill their position, right? They didn't do the will of Elohim, and it was stripped from it. Isaiah 53:6.
All like sheep went astray, each one of us had turned to his own way, and Yahuwah has laid on him the crookedness of us all.
There it is. So we are the sheep of Yahuwah, Israel, right? And he's letting you know we went astray. We all went to our own will. We want to do our own thing and not follow the purpose and will that Yah created us for. So there's iniquity and sin that built up. These are the wages of debt that you owe. And the only way to pay this price is a sacrifice, right? And the sacrifice that was promised was the Mashiach that will come and pay the price for you. Okay. So Yahuwah laid on his Messiah, the Mashiach, the crookedness or the iniquity of the whole nation of Israel. Isaiah 53:7.
He was oppressed and he was afflicted, but he did not open his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before his shearers is silent, but he did not open his mouth.
Cain. So we know his Mashiach again had to go through the same thing Israel went through. Israel went through oppression. They was afflicted. Yahuwah said, I saw the affliction that Pharaoh did to you, right? So Mashiach is the firstborn. He had to be called out of Egypt. He had to go through afflictions. He had to go through oppression too, right? But he's doing this as a pure, perfect lamb without spot, without blemish, without sin, to redeem his people from their fallen state, to be a covering for them so they can receive the blessings of the covenant instead of the curses that they've been receiving. Right? Yahuchanan 1:29. John 1, verse 29.
On the next day, Yochanan saw Yahusha coming toward him and said, "See the Lamb of Elohim who takes away the sin of the world."
Y'all hear that? So notice Israel's in a defiled state. They've sinned against Yahuwah, right? Um, the northern kingdom has been divorced, okay? And Judah played the harlot. They're not innocent either. They all need a redeemer, right? They all need the Mashiach who was promised. And nothing can happen until someone intercedes. And so that's why they've been left in this oppressed state because they know they need an intercessor because of all the sins and the wickedness that they have committed. And notice it's when the intercessor that is innocent, that is walking uprightly, comes in. Now Yahuwah can move. Right now, he can go and fulfill his promise because somebody out of the nation did what was right to break the cycle, break the generational curses. They rose up to the occasion, and Mashiach was that one that he sent to do it, to break the nation out of the generational curses that they've been suffering from because of disobedience. Okay. And just like those of us who are born again in the covenant of Elohim, we are now supposed to be the set apart sheep. We may be considered the black sheep to our families, right? But we're the ones breaking the generational curses, just like he had to come and do so. So we got to go through affliction. We got to go through being rejected. We got to go through all these things, right? So we can break the cycle by overcoming those things, maturing, healing, forgiving, and then become a light to show other people how to get out of darkness and come into the light. This is what Mashiach did, showed us the example, and this is what we have to go through once we choose to walk with Yahuwah Elohim. We have to undo all the things that our forefathers did that brought us into these curses in the first place. All right. So this is the Lamb of Elohim, Mashiach, taking away the sins of the world. All right. Hebrews 2 and 17.
So in every way he had to be made like his brothers in order to become a compassionate and trustworthy Kohan, high priest in matters related to Elohim to make atonement for the sins of the people.
Did y'all hear that? So Mashiach, he had to in every way be like his brothers, the nation of Israel, to become a what? He had to go through suffering. He had to go through being oppressed. He had to go through being rejected. He had to go through all these different things to become a compassionate and trustworthy person, a priest, a Kohan, in matters related to Elohim. Because if you didn't go through the human experience, you didn't go through being afflicted, oppressed, rejected, being, betrayed, you had to go through all this so you can learn how to have compassion, right? So you can know how to be a trustworthy person because you've seen somebody betray you and you know how that feels. And I don't want to be that way, right? I want to be the very thing that is honorable. When someone betrays you, that hurts you, right? And you don't want to hurt no one. You want to walk in righteousness and in love and embody that. So notice he had to go through this, showing us examples what we have to go through. But instead, we always look at it as something happening to us and not happening for us, right? We don't understand that, oh, this is supposed to teach us something. We just think we're just victims. We're not victims. When you come in Mashiach, you're not a victim anymore. You have power and authority. Become a son and a child of Elohim. So anything you go through is for your good, right? It ain't to destroy you, but you have to change your mindset to know what's going on, recognize what these things is doing, and the purpose of it. So Mashiach had to learn these things so he can become a compassionate high priest in the matters related to Elohim, so he can be the acceptable atonement for the sins of the people because he didn't allow the coldness and the sin of this world to harden his heart to where he became impure with everybody else. Right? He stood against it and chose light. He was diligent in guarding the word of Elohim to so his heart would stay, pure. He was resilient, okay? And this resilience he had was his power and his strength because he abided in Elohim. He cleaved to the word of Yah, so he was resilient from everything that tried to come against him to fulfill his purpose and his mission. And it's the same thing we got to do. We got to be resilient sons of Elohim, warriors in the spirit, right? And not allow this world to make our hearts cold and we become dark, right? No, we have to transmute all that and be light and shine light and shine love to transmute everything else around us and show the examples for others who are in darkness and think there's no way out. All right. But this is the rites of passage that everybody has to go through, okay? At least the sons of light have to, for sure. So this is him making the atonement for the sins of the people. He went through all these things to share in the same things that his brothers shared in. Even as Moshe, remember Moshe said, I reject Pharaoh's house and I'd rather go suffer with my people than to stay here and receive all this great stuff and live great while my people are suffering, right? So we see that Shiach chose to leave Shemaim, right? Leave his realm where he had power and all that to become a servant and to lay his life down to redeem his people. So this is what shepherds are called to do, right? Hebrews 2 and 18.
For in what he has suffered himself being tried, he is
So
able to
notice
help
that
those who are
he had
tried.
to go through the things you go through so he can have that experience that man has to be able to intercede for man, right? Because again, you can only reach people if you've been through the things that they've been through. And that's why a lot of us, we start off in a certain way, right? As man from conditions of where, where Yah brought us out from, but those experiences we never forget. And it's because those experiences, other people also experiencing those things, but they don't see a way out of it, right? And we're there to show the light of Elohim and how Yah did this for us, and He can do it for you, right? So, but if you never went through those experiences, you don't have the ability to have compassion or empathy for these people, knowing the struggles and the things that they went through, because you haven't went through any of those things. So Mashiach had to go through that so he can be that intercessor for us, knowing how we are tried in the earth, knowing the temptations of the flesh and how the struggle of denying ourselves and doing these things and pride and all that. He had to go through all those different things and die to those things of the flesh, right? Just as we called to do. Even you who have to suffer and you have to go through trials and overcome them and not let them, take you out, not let them, have you surrender to the evil that people are doing to you and you become an evildoer. Because then what they did to you just made you to want to be like them, right? No, you had to overcome all that. So then you can be able to help those who are going through those things and show them this is the way to go, not this way. You can't fight fire with fire. You see that? You can't fight hate with hate. No, you have to walk in love. This is how you overcome. So he did that. He went through that, showed us the way, right? And now we are followers of him and we have to follow that example. So understanding the Pesach, the Passover, when I see, Exodus 12 and 13 says, when I see the blood, I will pass over you. So this blood atonement that Mashiach paid, right? This blood must be on the doorposts of your hearts. So when Yahuwah comes to visit this world, this earth, for all the sins and iniquities, he sees the blood of the Passover lamb on you when he will pass over you. You will not get caught in the wrath and destruction that he's about to pour out on the nations for evil, wickedness, and sin. So this is what this Passover blood is all about. This physical representation represents something spiritual, okay? It's the blood of atonement. So every year we have these we call Kadesh Moedim, right? Or set apart days or celebrations at Yahuwah's appointed times, which are where we literally celebrate the plan of salvation that is written in the heavenly scroll, commonly called the Mazarot, which Daud probably declares is the bridegroom running the course of a wedding. Okay? He's running the course of a wedding. Now, this is all about a marriage between the son of Yahuwah Elohim, his right hand, and the bride, which is the nation of Israel. We're supposed to be a light to the nations, right? And they're supposed to reign over the earth together. This is what this is all about. The father making sure he has a suitable bride for his son. They have to go through the purgings and everything that his son went through because they're not equally yoked. They cannot reign together. So this is why the bride must go through the rites of passage, mature, and become, equally yoked, all right, with Mashiach so they can reign supreme together in the new world to come or the millennial kingdom. Okay. So these feasts are your rites of passage of how you get through and become perfected, mature, whole to be a perfect bride for Mashiach. It involves the spring feast, right? So which first begins with the courtship during Passover, unleavened bread, all the way through Shavuot. All right, this is the courtship with the bridegroom and the bride. So the bridegroom is this knight in shining armor that redeems his people out of oppression, or his bride out of this oppressive state. He cleanses her up an unleavened bread, making her this bride without spot, without blemish. And then this 50-day count of introducing her to his covenant, his rules, regulations, to see if they want to marry or agree to the terms of the marriage. All right. And then we see after that courtship, the engagement takes place right at the end of Shavuot. After they spent time learning each other, agreeing to the covenant, and going forward. Then the groom then goes to prepare a place for his bride in his father's house. In my father's house is many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, you may also be as well. Right. So the groom is doing this, and while the groom is doing that, the bride is learning everything she needs to learn about the groom, so she could be this perfect bride upon his return, that can function in his house and walk in his commandments and set apart ways. All right. So now Mashiach has left. Those who are engaged, so we're really haven't married Mashiach yet. We're engaged to him, right? Because we are agreeing to the covenant, the ketubah that he gave to his, to the nation of Israel, that they accept to be brides to him. That's the process of what's going on here. So we agreed to the covenant, and now we receive the promise of the engagement of the set apart spirit, right? We took the blood of atonement for the Passover lamb, unleavened bread. We're cleansed and purifying ourselves so we can be engaged and then be married upon the bridegroom's return, right? But we have to be faithful while he is gone, preparing a place for us. We can't be brides out here committing whoredoms and sleeping around and not being purified virgins, clean. All right, we can't be worshiping other gods, defiling ourselves, being spiritual whores. We have to be really set apart. It's a good bride, so upon his return, we can be equally yoked to our Ish, our husbandman, which is Mashiach. Then the fall feast, when he returns, right? The bridegroom returns in the fall, and this is where the groom returns. He returns on trumpets, right? The Feast of Trumpets is the announcement of his return. Okay, this is the grand opening, the grand arrival, right? That goes before his return. Feast of Trumpets, are commonly called Yom Teruah. And then we have the wedding where the bridegroom and the bride meet at the altar of atonement, called the Day of Atonement or Yom Kippur. All right, where they enter into the marriage. Then they enjoy the marriage supper of the Lamb, which is a celebration of a 7-day feast of the wedding. All right, where the Lamb or Mashiach is dwelling with his wife, and they are feasting and celebrating their wedding for 7 days. Okay, so again, on Passover, you as the bride, you have to be prepared, right? So you must prepare yourself for the courtship, entering into the Passover. So you're actually entering into a covenant here through Passover. So you can now prepare and set yourself apart to become a wife. So this is the courtship. This is again all rehearsing because we are not actually married yet to Mashiach. We're engaged to be married. So we go through this courtship and then of engagement, receiving the promise of the spirit, right? And then when he returns, we're supposed to be the brides without spot and blemish, ready to be married. You have to prepare your body, which you have to mikvah, cleanse yourself, take a shower, right? Cleanse your body of sin, purify yourself, and then you have to prepare your mind for the date. And you must make sure that you have a circumcised heart to doing the inner work of cleansing and walking circumspectly, examining your hearts and demonstrating a contrite heart and love for your groom to be. So during this courtship time, you're learning who the Mashiach is, your husband. You're learning, his ways, so you can, fit into his household and know how to function in his household and do the things that please him. All these things you are, looking at ways how you can serve him and his purpose, right? To be a good bride to help him in his purpose and what it is of, winning souls for his kingdom, right? So we're here to be fishers of men. So you seeing what kind of gifts do I have to be a good bride? Right, so I could service my husband, the Mashiach, and use it for his kingdom so his house can expand and grow and become very abundant, and a devotion to his covenant, to the vows that you are making to be with him. And on Passover, we are here to offer ourselves to our grooms to be as a living sacrificial lamb, spotless through mikvah, right, immersion, and we enter into a covenant with him. So this is the beginning phase where we offer ourselves. We say, okay, to become a wife, you have to divorce a part of yourself to make room for your husband and his will and his purpose in your life, right? So this is the sacrifice that a wife makes. Okay. So this is what we have to do, be living sacrifices to Mashiach, saying not our will, but his will be done. All right. We are here to do his will to expand his kingdom. You see that? So this is the sacrifice that you have to go through, the rites of passage to become a wife. So you deny yourself. It's no longer about you, it's about your husband and his household, right? His legacy of the kingdom of Elohim and you being a virtuous bride for him and expanding his territory of his kingship by drawing and winning souls and demonstrating, the kingdom and righteousness and all these things. So this is what you present yourself as a living sacrifice unto Mashiach. So if you are not doing that on Passover, you miss the entire point of this Moedim and all the Moedims. And only those who are properly prepared as his bride get engaged, and only those engaged make it into the kingdom for the wedding, if they have been faithful upon his return. All right. Remember, he says the kingdom of heaven again is like these brides who are waiting for the bridegroom, right? There's 10 virgins, five wise, five foolish. Five was prepared and ready when he came. They didn't know what hour and what time. He came at midnight in the darkest part of the hour. Everybody would be sleeping, and those that wasn't ready didn't make it. So the only those who engaged that is seeking Yahuwah, trying to learn his ways and become that bride without blemish, they were ready. Their lamps was full of oil, their light was shining. And so the revelation of Yahuwah's feast days, some people may wonder, why can't we just celebrate, the way we want to celebrate, the Most High and, you know, the Mashiach and all these different things. And, some may say, well, why does any day matter, right? Why can't we just celebrate feasts when we want to do it? Just, does it matter when I keep the feast day on this day or the Shabbat on this day? Does it matter? Doesn't Elohim just know our hearts and we love him and we just do what we want to do and show how we love him, right? But this thing is Elohim is set apart and he has a requirement on how he is to be loved. He is love and there's a way he wants to be loved and he gives us instructions on how to love him. He's not common. He doesn't want you to treat him like, other people you known or, other mighty ones that you are familiar with. He's like, no, I'm different. I'm not them. I'm him. Right. And he's like, this is how I desire to be loved and treated. And you're going to respect that or you just not going to be here. You see that? So this is why he gave us instructions on how to love, how to walk with him and do the things that please him so we can remain with him. All right. So we're going to see why he chose the days he chose, and all days aren't the same. It's Ecclesiasticus or Sirach 33, verse 7 through 9. It says, why are some days set apart or more holier than others, even though the same sun rises on every day of the year? It is because Yahuwah made them different by setting them apart as set apart days and festivals. He made some days set apart and important, and he made other days ordinary. All right. And when you go on to read, it talks about some days he has cursed, right? And some days he has exalted. So knowing Yahuwah's time clock, his calendar, his set apart days, all these things are important. So all days aren't the same, right? And Yahuwah's letting you know those who belong to me are going to follow my ways, right? They're going to do the things that I do and tell them to let them be distinct from whoever anyone else is. I know that they are mine because I find them doing what I tell them to do. I know my wife because she's doing the things that please me. She knows my ways. She knows what I like and what I do. So when I come, I know exactly who she is. I know what she's doing, where she's going to be, right? Because she's following my ways while the world is doing something else. They're doing everything, with the adversary. There's another mighty one out here. He has his days and his stuff. And I don't want my wife mixing and mingling with them. She's supposed to be set apart because I'm set apart. You see that? So this is why Yahuwah is letting you know, like, yeah, no, in your head, you think a day is just any day and we could just celebrate whenever we want to and, our hearts and all this. But he's like, no, there's a distinction, right? And you need to make sure that you are distinct in who you serve and how you serve, to let you know that you belong to me or you belong to someone else. All right. So again, this is a husband being very protective over his bride, his wife, and making sure she's honoring him, right? And not out here making him look crazy and bringing shame to his name. Jubilees chapter 6:35.
For I know, and from henceforth will I declare it to you,
Mhm.
and it is not of my own division, for the book lies written before me, and on the heavenly tablets the division of days is ordained. Lest they forget the feasts of the covenant, and walk according to the feasts of the Gentiles, after their error and after their
So
ignorance.
this is why he gave you instructions, right, on how to celebrate his festivals, how to be set apart in him, right? Because he knows that you get amongst these nations, and right, you start being envious of the nations, you want to be like the nations. He's like, look, if you don't guard my covenant, my instructions, out of your own devising, he's letting you know what you're going to end up doing. And he lets you know that they're going to end up forgetting the feast of the covenant, chasing after the Gentiles, right? Wanting to be like the Gentiles. They're going to walk according to the feasts of the Gentiles after their error and after their ignorance. And that's what our people are doing today. Yeah, people who claim that they know Messiah, they love Messiah, right? And all these things, but they celebrating pagan Christmas and pagan Easter and St. Patrick's Day and Valentine's Day and Halloween and Christmas and all these pagan wicked festivals that does not represent Yahuah Elohim at all. And you cannot say, hey, I'm gonna do this for the Most High when he says, no, I'm different. I require you to do this to show me you love me and that you want to, do the will of that I called you to do and celebrate the way I tell you to celebrate, not be like the nations and mingle with darkness when I'm set apart and walk in light. You see that? So we have to divorce ourselves from the pagan ways of the Gentiles and be set apart. Yahuwah has given us his set apart feast that shows that we belong to him. When you celebrate these other feasts, you are showing you belong to his adversary, his his very enemy. So that's how he's going to know who belongs to him because they're busy doing those things that is pleasing to him. But if you doing all this other stuff, he's like, that's not my child. That's not my wife over there. She's not part of, they not part of my house because they doing the adversary's works. You see that? So the enemy is very crafty and has the world following his ways, while the set apart ones of Yahuwah are returning back to covenant and cleaving only to his ways, not mixing and mingling with the Gentiles and their wicked ways and ignorance. And those who have ears to hear and eyes to see by the Spirit of Elohim are returning back to the ancient path. Now, this is Psalm 73, verse 8 in the Septuagint. Let's see what this says here.
And the race they have set in their hearts, even all their kindred together. Come, let us abolish the feasts of Yahuwah from the earth.
There it is, right? So notice this is a crafty counsel that are coming against Yahuwah and his people and saying, come, let us abolish, destroy the feast of Yahuwah from the earth. So the world doesn't even remember his feast, right? But everybody knows pagan Satan's feast, right? Everybody you turn on TV, go in any city, everybody in sync, following Christmas and Easter and all these different things. That is all paganism, right? The worship of false gods, right? Not the mighty one of Yahuwah Elohim, the mighty one of Israel. See that? So they've done a good job, right, at deceiving the world, which we was warned about that serpent that deceived the whole world, right? So notice the adversary wants to change the times and laws that Elohim set place. He wants to change Yahuwah's appointed times, his Moedim, so people start worshiping his holidays, right? Celebrating his feasts, his Shabbats, his all his stuff, right? And while you thinking you doing or serving the Most High, was you serving this mighty one, not Yahuwah, right? So this was his deception. This is how the serpent that deceived the whole world got everybody following his ways and his appointed times. All right. So we see this is what took place. But again, Yahuwah is restoring all things for those who have a heart for him and cleave to him. Right. He's leading you back to him, but you have to answer that call and separate yourself from the nations. So the origin of Pesach. We're going to look here on what Passover means. The Hebrew word for Passover is actually Pesach, okay? And it means a permission, that is exemption, used only technically of the Israelite Passover or the festival or the victim. Passover offering, the root word is pasak, and it means to hop. That is to skip over or to spare. By implication, says to hesitate, also literally to limp, to dance, halt, become lame, leap, or pass over. So initially, that's what the Passover is, right? You're being spared from death. The blood of the Passover lamb is why the death angel is passing over your house or passing over your temple, your body, right? And not killing you because he sees the blood of the lamb on your doorpost. So he skips over you, as we see this Hebrew word means to skip over, pass over, to leap, to exempt, right? To where you are exempt from being destroyed. Exodus Shemot 12 and 1.
And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and to Aaron in the land of Mizraim, saying,
hmm
This month is the beginning of months for you. It is the first month of the year for you.
There it is. So for the Israelites, right, for the set apart ones of Yahuah Elohim and his children, those that cleave to his covenant, he's letting you know that your new year is not the new year of the Gentiles in the dead of winter where they worship their pagan god Janus, right, in January. Okay? He says, no, my children, your new year is on the first month of Abib, the first day of spring, right, where everything is fruitful and abundant. This is your new year. This is where you are to celebrate. Okay? Exodus 12, verse 3.
Speak to all the congregation of Yisrael, saying, On the 10th day of this new month, each one of them is to take for himself a lamb, according to the house of his father, a lamb for a household.
There it is, right? So notice on the what? 10th day, you are supposed to go pick out a lamb for yourself, according to, the house of your father, a lamb for the whole household. So this is what you're supposed to do. On the 10th day is when you're supposed to inspect the lamb, right? You're making sure it has no blemish and all that, and you keeping it, you're examining it all the way to the 14th day, right? So notice Mashiach was that happened to Mashiach, right? Where they took him in, pretty much apprehended him, right? The Romans and all that, and he was being inspected and going to court and had to justify himself and all that stuff before they start putting tools to his body and hurting him, right? Just as the sacrificial lamb before the day of Passover is inspected, examined, and so forth, and before the slaughter of the sheep or the lamb. These are instructions of Elohim. Shemot 12 and 4. Exodus 12, verse 4.
And the household is too small for the lamb, let him, his neighbor to next to his house, to take according to the number of the beings according to each man needs you make your count for the lamb.
There it is, right? So he's letting you know if your household's too small for the lamb, again, you can go to your next door neighbor to his house and you could take it to the number according to of the beings that's dwelling in your house, right? According to each man's need, you can count for the lamb, all right? So households got to come together. That's what they have to do, right? So everybody's commanded to keep this feast, each lamb for each household, right? So everybody had a lamb in Israel at this time, okay? Every household had to have a lamb. And it says that if your household is too small, then you can give it to your neighbor and so forth and share it with them. But you have to take it according to the number of the beings within the household, right? That you are to count for the lamb. Shemot, Exodus 12 and 5.
Let the lamb be a perfect one, a year old male. Take it from the sheep or from the goats.
So it has to be a perfect one, a complete one, all right, without spot, without blemish, a year old. And you got to take it from the sheep or from the goats, okay? Shemot 12 and 6.
And you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same first month. Then all the assembly of the congregation of Yisrael to slay it between the evening.
But notice you slay the whole congregation took part in slaying the Mashiach. All right. They said, let this fall on us and our and our children's children, all that, right? And but notice this is all still part of prophecy. When you do take a lamb for Passover, the whole congregation is supposed to slaughter a lamb, right? 10th day you supposed to get it. You're supposed to keep it until the 14th day, right? So you're getting to know this lamb, getting familiar with the lamb. The 14th day is when you are to slay it. You are to sacrifice it, okay? And you do this between the evenings. So we went over that last Shabbat, right? What between the evening means, right? And between the evening is from the setting of the sun, be it from noon to 3 p.m. and then to the second evening, which is from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. when the sun goes down, right? So this is the time frame you have to slaughter the sacrifice of the Passover, drain the blood, skin it, you know what I'm saying, butcher it so you can cook it and everything. You have this process of time on day 14 to take care of these things, right? This is a process. So Yahuwah is giving you this whole day to make sure you can, do this. Shemot 12 and 7.
And they shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the lintel of the houses where they eat it.
So we know the blood of the lamb is supposed to be on your doorpost, right? Now we know the blood of the lamb is Mashiach's blood. That was a fulfillment of that. And we put this blood on the doorpost of our hearts. This blood protects you from the death angel.
And they shall eat the flesh of that night, roasted in fire, with unleavened bread and with bitter herbs. They shall eat it.
So notice you're supposed to eat the Passover. Okay, you're supposed to eat the Passover, and he's letting you know you're supposed to eat it that night. So on the 14th day, once the sun goes down, right? Yeah, it should be already cooked and ready, roasted, right? And you're supposed to eat it with unleavened bread and with bitter herbs. This is how you know you eat it on the night of unleavened bread. You don't eat it on the 14th, you eat it on the 15th, okay? You prepare it on the 14th, okay? Verse 9.
Do not eat it raw, nor boiled at all with water, but roasted in fire, its head with its legs and an inward parts.
There it is. So you can't make no boiled stew or boiled soup, whatever it is with lamb. All right. You got to grill this lamb over the fire. All right. Verse 10.
And do not leave it into morning. And what remains of it into morning you are to burn with fire.
So you can't allow the morning to come in, right, without you having make sure you ate all the lamb. And any things you didn't eat, you have to burn it with fire. It's set apart unto Yahuwah. Can't have no seconds for the next day, warm up plates for the next day. Take out none of that, right? So you have to burn it up if you have any extra that people didn't eat before the next day or the morning. Verse 11, Shemot 12, verse 11.
And this is how you eat it: your loins girded, and your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is the Pesach of Yahuwah.
There it is, right? So notice it is the Pesach of Yahuwah, right? The Passover lamb. This is the Passover of Yahuwah. So notice Passover is not the day. See that on the 14th day, you are to get the Passover lamb. The Passover is the lamb. Okay. You prepare the Passover. So on the 14th day at evening, which a new day starts, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, you are to eat the Passover with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. You see that? This is the tradition on how we are supposed to eat the Passover, right? Remembering that we was in haste out of Egypt, leaving. Yahuwah redeemed us. So, a lot of people don't know and understand that the Pesach is not the day. The Pesach or the Passover is the actual lamb. So whenever when you read the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, and it says that the Messiah and his disciples went so they can, have the Passover, that means that they ate the Passover. They ate the lamb. Okay, like we didn't see Messiah eating no meat or not. No, yeah, he did. The lamb is called the Passover. They ate the Passover. Okay, Shiach kept the feast. All right. So a lot of people, they think that, the Messiah didn't eat no Passover lamb or nothing like that, and not understanding the Passover is the lamb. Okay. Shemot 12 and 12.
And it shall pass through the land of Mizraim on the night, and shall strike all the firstborn in the land of Mizraim, both man and beast, and on all the mighty ones of Mizraim I shall execute judgment.
I
I
shall.
am Yahuwah.
So he's letting you know he's about to execute judgment on all the firstborn, right? From man and beast. Okay, everything that came out the womb that opened the matrix, he's about to kill. Who is judging the mighty ones, the gods of Egypt? Now, these guys wasn't wood and stone and all that. These were actually mighty ones, okay? We call, the sons of El. So you gotta remember in Deuteronomy, it talks about how, the 70 sons of El cast lots over the nations, right? But the nation of Israel was unto Yahuah Elohim and became his lot, his portion. But the other nations became the lots and portions of the other sons of El, which these are what we call angels, watchers who are over the nations. They worship them, right? They serve those, mighty ones, and they provided for them and all these things. But when they decided to bring in, the Yahuwah's nation into bondage and to treat them poorly and oppress them, then Yahuwah took that as disrespect. And Yahuwah said, you know what, I'm going to judge not only the people, but the mighty ones, the gods of Egypt, who, encouraged this, right? Who permitted this. He's going to show the nations, of Egypt that he is the ultimate say and the higher power than any other powers. All right. Shemot 12, verse 13.
And the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I shall pass over you, and let the plague not come on you to destroy you when I strike the land of Mizraim.
There it is. So this is the last plague, right? It was 10 plagues. The last one is the death of the firstborn. That's firstborn of sons or your children, and the firstborns of all the cattle, beast that you have in the field. So Yahuwah's letting you know, this is what you did to my children. I'm gonna do this to yours. But those who have the blood of the lamb are going to be protected from this last plague that he sends forth. All right. Shemot 12 and 14.
And this day shall become to you a remembrance, and you shall celebrate it a festival of Yahuwah throughout your generations. Celebrate it as a ordinance and an everlasting law.
There it is, right? So there is no doing away with this, right? This is an ordinance and an everlasting, a forever law that Elohim gave for us to do this as a memorial in remembrance, right? And to celebrate this festival. So this is what we were supposed to pass down to our children, and they supposed to celebrate this. Now that word remembrance is the Hebrew word zikron, okay? Zikron, and it means a memento, a memorable thing, a day or writing, a memorial, a record. And then the word ordinance there is the Hebrew word kukah. Kuka means substantially the same appointed custom, a manner, an ordinance, a site, a statute. Okay? So this is what the custom is of the Passover, right? That we do in remembrance and we have been commanded to, according to the covenant of Elohim, to do every year. When Yahuwah says you are to keep my laws, statutes, and commandments, feast days are statutes, right? There are the custom statutes that Yahuwah has given us to do. They're ordinances, right? So we have to keep all these things, not just commandments, right? We have the commandments, but then we have also his laws and his ordinances, his statutes. It's forever, an everlasting law. Okay. So we are supposed to pass this down to our generations. And this is our culture. The Gentiles took the scriptures and they don't teach you none of these things to let you know that this is the actual cultural laws that Yahuwah gave to the nation of Israel, right? So when you teach a book without the culture of the book and you then misunderstand a lot of the text, you don't understand it properly because you're looking at it from a whole different mindset, right? When you remove the culture from the people, then it becomes religion, all right, and man-made doctrines and all kind of other stuff. Now, the root word to kuka is kok, right? Kok, and it means an appointment of time, space, quantity, labor, or usage, appointed, bound, commandment, convenient, custom, decree, a law. Necessary ordinance. Okay. It says portion, set time, statute, task. So you are only supposed to do this ordinance at a specific and appointed time. Right? It's a set time that Yahuwah is giving. You can't do the Passover whenever you feel like it. Whenever you want to do it. Well, I just got the taste for lamb and want to do a Passover this week. No, that's not how it works. All right. You have to do this at Yahuwah's appointed times in his season and the day that he said to do it. All right. Let's look at Shemot or Exodus 12 and 15.
7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Indeed, on the first day you cause leaven to cease from your houses. For whoever eats unleavened bread from the first day until the seventh day, that being shall be cut from Israel.
So this causes you to have to walk circumspectly, right? You have to really examine your actions every day to make sure you're not eating no leavened bread. All leaven, food is out of your house, right? So you're not tempted to eat something mistakenly, right? That you shouldn't eat because you will be cut off from among your people. You see that? So that's how serious this is. So again, this is all preparation, preparing you to be a bride, to enter into the next phase of the covenant if you can pass these things. So we notice that the Passover and unleavened bread is connected. Okay. So on Passover, you can cook, right? It's not a Shabbat, right? The 14th day is not a Shabbat, it's not a Shabbaton. Okay. So it's a low malaka, right? Or a low malakton. So you shall do no servile work, but is an exception to do all work that is needed for cooking. So that means the laws of Shabbat as far as lighting a fire does not count, right? So we're not supposed to kindle the light of the Shabbat, right, on the Shabbat, but on the Feast of Unleavened Bread and Shavuot, it is not a Shabbat or Shabbaton. It's so you can kindle a light, you can even drive on this day to go wherever you need to go and take care of whatever you need to take care of to make sure that you can keep the feast properly, right? Out of all the days, you can do this, okay? Because this is considered what we call a cog feast. Now, a cog, when we look that up in the Hebrew, it means a pilgrimage, right? So, there are three pilgrimage feasts where you have to travel, and these are the ones that are commanded in Pesach and unleavened bread, in the Feast of Shavuot, and in the Feast of Tabernacles. You are commanded to make a pilgrimage to the promised land, to the land of Jerusalem, right? The city of Jerusalem, where we are appointed to keep the Feast of Yahuwah, right? These three feasts for sure, which are the Cog or pilgrimage feasts. And so these aren't, Shabbats where you can't cook and do certain things, right? You can cook on these things. So everybody has the food that they need to celebrate. All right. So 7 days you are to eat unleavened bread. And indeed, the first day, the 15th, which is the 14th sundown, where you eat the Passover with the unleavened bread and the bitter herbs. That's your first time eating the the unleavened bread on the day of unleavened bread. Okay. And then you have 7 days where you are to make sure there is no leaven in your houses. You are to remove all leaven from your house. Okay. For whoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the seventh day, that being shall be cut off from Israel. Okay. So notice these 7 days are like a day of purification, right? Where you're purging all sin. Leaven represents sin, right? So you're purging all this sin out of your lives, your physical body, your temple, and you're making sure you're getting all the leaven out of your physical house as well, as a reminder how you're supposed to be purifying your physical temple along with, your spiritual temple, right? With your body and so forth. So you're supposed to search your house, make sure you get all the leaven out, just like you should be searching your inner man, your soul, right? Your spirit man, to make sure all sin is getting removed and purged out, because you are preparing yourself, to be with the king, right? The king of the universe who was set apart. You have to be set apart. So this is the process. Any soul that does eat leaven on these 7 days or have leaven in their house shall be cut off. Okay? So you need to be guarding everything you eat, knowing that you're not eating, any leaven or nobody bringing any leaven into your household. Okay? Now that word unleavened bread is the Hebrew word matzah. The definition means the sense of greedily devouring, for sweetness, properly sweetness, concretely sweet, that is not soured or bitter with yeast. Specifically, an unfermented cake or loaf, or elliptically, the festival of Passover, Pesach, because no leaven was then used. Unleavened bread, cake without leaven. Okay, so you ought to make this matzah bread without yeast, without the bitterness or sourdough. Okay, so make sure that you're not using yeast, which causes things to raise, right? You have to eat this unleavened bread, unfermented cake, because fermentation is what causes yeast. So anything with fermentation, you have to cease from eating. Any kind of fermenting agents that can cause things to ferment, right? You have to make sure you're not eating these things and these things are out of your house. The word for leaven there is the Hebrew word sior, right? Sior. And what it means is barm or yeast cake, as swelling by fermentation leaven. You see that? So you have to make sure you get all leaven out of your house, right? You got to make sure that you eat no leavened bread, anything that has barm or yeast. All right. Now, barm you can find in like beers and all that. You can't have alcohol and these different things, right? These is what we call yeast fermentation, and these things again violate the 7 day festival of unleavened bread. Barm, the definition is the foam or the scum formed on the top of liquor. Fermented alcoholic beverages such as beer or wine, or feedstock for hard liquor or industrial ethanol distillation. When fermenting, it was used to leaven bread or set up fermentation in a new batch of liquor. Barm as a leaven has also been made from ground millet combined with must out of wine tubs, and is sometimes used in English baking as a synonym for a natural leaven. Okay, so we have must. Must is from the Latin vinum mustum, meaning young wine. It's freshly pressed fruit juice, usually grape juice, that contains the skins, seeds, and stems of the fruit. The solid portion of the must is called pomace. All right. And it typically makes up 7% to 23% of the total weight of the must. Making must is the first step in winemaking because of its high glucose content. Typically between 10 and 15%. Must is also used as a sweetener in a variety of cuisines. Unlike commercially sold grape juice, which is filtered and pasteurized, must is thick with particulate matter, opaque. It comes in various shades of brown and or purple. Okay, so you got to make sure you got all must, barm, yeast fermentation out of your house, and nothing is being made or cooked with these things because you cannot eat these things as well. Okay. Yeast is something naturally occurred in the atmosphere, right? In the old days, what we used to do is many people would take, sugar water and put it on a seal, right, with some flour or whatnot. And a little bit of that, if you leave it out overnight on the window sill, and the yeast that occurs naturally in the atmosphere, it would go into this thing and create a lump, right? And that lump was normally used to make other breads, and you would just save that lump and you would pass that lump on and on. And so you would take that and save a part of that because it had active yeast in there, right? And so you start making some bread with it, and even when you make your bread, you take part of that and you put it aside and you keep it activated. So it's almost like you're keeping a fire burning. That's the old ways of doing things. But in our time, you can go to the store and there's now more modern ways of storing yeast, or a dry format of it, right? And all it takes is a little water and sugar to activate it. So yeast is something that happens naturally in the atmosphere, and you want to make sure that any products that contain yeast that are inside of your house, if you can't afford to throw it out, you can get a storage bin or storage containers, and you could put it in that thing, right? Things that wouldn't spoil. Okay. And you just put it outside of your house for that week. And as long as it's not inside of your house, right? That's the only option you have. Okay. That's that, instead of throwing it out, okay, or giving it away to the heathens, right? But don't move it into your car and then drive it around all week with stuff in your trunk. You didn't violate it. the feast doing that. Okay. It has to be outside of your home, any place that you're dwelling. You have a storage outside if you that you can place it in. You know, you can store it out there as long as it's not the place that you are dwelling or sleeping in. Okay. Looking at wine here, wine, unlike commercially sold grape juice, which is filtered and pasteurized, is thick with particulate matter, opaque, and comes in various shades of brown and purple. Wine is an alcoholic beverage made from fermented grapes or other fruits. The natural chemical balance of grapes lets them ferment without the addition of sugars, acids, enzymes, water, or other nutrients. Yeast consumes the sugars in the grapes and converts them into alcohol. Different varieties of grapes and strains of yeast produce different types of wine. Kosher wine that is described as kosher for Passover must have been kept from the contact with grain, bread, and dough. To be considered kosher, a Shabbat observing Yahudi or Jew must be involved in the entire winemaking process from the harvesting of the grapes through the fermentation to bottling. Okay, so anything fermented will be a violation, right? So you couldn't allow it to be fermented. Yeast can't be found in your dwelling place, right? So if you go to any Messianic congregation or Hebrew Israelite congregation, you will find in most cases, in almost all cases, they may be using fermented products at the table. Wine from Moscato, Stella Rosa, Chardonnay, Merlot, Sangria, and so forth, and they'd be partying heavy. You know, I've seen tables with it, even Hennessy and Jack Daniels on there, vodka, Patron, tequila, hard liquors on Passover and unleavened bread. And this shouldn't be on Passover table because no fermentation, any alcoholic beverages violates the whole instructions on keeping this feast. Okay? So all these things contain whatever percentage of alcohol, and alcohol comes from yeast. Something must be fermented to produce the alcohol, right? So having that on the Passover table or even anywhere in your dwelling for the 7 days unleavened bread is breaking Yahuwah's commandments. All right. Now the other word here for leaven, the root is kametz, right? Which means ferment, figuratively extortion, leaven, or leaven bread. Okay, Shemot 12, Exodus 12 or 16 says, and on the first day is a set apart gathering. And on the seventh day, you have a set apart gathering. No work at all is done on them, only that which is eaten by every being. That alone is prepared by you. All right. So again, you can cook, you can do these things for this feast, right? Verse 17, and you shall guard the festival of Matzot, or unleavened bread. For on this same day I brought your divisions out of the land of Mizraim, and you shall guard this day throughout your generations as an everlasting law. Okay, so notice the day that Yahuwah brought us out of Mizraim is actually the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? Because it was night when he brought us out of Egypt, which is the 15th, right? The day we ate unleavened bread with the Passover, with our loins girded and our staffs in our hand, being ready to be rushed out of Egypt, okay? Because Pharaoh had told us to get out after the firstborn plague, all right? Now, that word where it says you are to guard this day throughout your generations, that Hebrew word is shamar, right? Shamar means properly to hedge about as with thorns. That is, guard, generally to protect, attend to, etc. Beware, be circumspect, right? You need to take heed to yourself, keep yourself marked, look narrowly, observe, preserve, and regard, right? Be a watchman. Okay, so you need to be a watchman over this day and these 7 days to make sure you do not violate the instructions that Yahuwah gave you on how to celebrate this festival. All right. Also, the Hebrew word olam. Olam means concealed. That is the vanishing point, right? Where it says you are supposed to keep this as an everlasting law. It's the Hebrew word olam, and it means eternity. Okay. It means a continuous, eternal, lasting, okay, of old, lasting long time, old time, perpetual at any time, beginning of the world without end. You see that? So there's no vanishing point to this. That means this law is everlasting that you're supposed to keep and guard this festival. All right, it's eternal. So we are supposed to eat the matzah bread of affliction, which you read in Deuteronomy 16. So these 7 days is called the 7 days of unleavened bread, the bread of affliction, because of the hard bondage that we went through in Egypt. Yahuwah is purifying and purging us from the ways of the Egyptians, right? So he's bringing us out to clean us up so we can be proper brides for him to enter into covenant with him. So this is called the 7 days of the bread of affliction, where we are purging ourselves, okay, from all uncleanness and any iniquity or sin in our lives. So preparing for unleavened bread. Shemot 12:18 says, in the first month, on the 14th day of the new month, in the evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the new month in the evening. All right. Shemot 12:19, for 7 days no leaven is to be found in your houses. For if anyone eats what is leavened, that same being shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether sojourner or native of the land. So this applies not to only native born Israelites, but even strangers that sojourn among you who are also covenant keepers with you in Yahuah Elohim. Right? They all have to keep this law. Okay, there's no separate law for the strangers. Shemota Exodus 12:20 says, do not eat that which is leavened. In all your dwellings you are to eat unleavened bread. And Moshe called for all the elders of Israel and said to them, go out and take lambs for yourselves according to your clans and slay the Pesach, slay the Passover. All right. So during this time of spring, it's called spring cleaning, where we got to, search all throughout your house, right? To make sure you're getting all the yeast and fermentation out of your house, right? Looking for all your ingredients in your cabinets, everything. Make sure you got no yeast products, all right? And looking for leavening agents, okay? Making sure you have none of these going on. Now, a leavening agent, leavening, also known as a raising agent, is any one of a number of substances used in doughs and batters that causes a foaming action that lightens and softens it by incorporating gas bubbles into it. The alternative or supplement to leavening agents is mechanical leavening, by which air is incorporated by mechanical means. Leavening agents can be synthetic chemical compounds or consist of biological agents. Okay. So you want to make sure you're looking at these things. Can't have no bread. So, you know, preparing for unleavened bread, you want to eat up or get all, if you want to throw it all out, you make sure these things are getting, taken out, be it by eating it up, not storing it in your cabinets, or putting it out in a bin somewhere. Now, the gas produced is often carbon dioxide, right? But other gases such as hydrogen are also used. When a dough or batter is mixed, the starch in the flour mixes with the water in the dough to form a matrix, often supported further by proteins like gluten or polysaccharides like peninsins or exanthan gum. Then it gelatinizes and it sets the holes left by the gas bubbles remain. Right. So any baked goods with baker's yeast, pizza doughs, bread, etc., including most sourdough breads, B vitamins, unless stated that they are not from yeast, you have to make sure you get rid of these things. All right. Your ketchups, your hot sauces, all this, vinegar, these all fermentation, all this stuff, your sodas, pastas, peanut butters, you know, chips, all these are yeast products, right? So you got to make sure you get these things out and check your ingredients. Bagels, beer, bread rolls, apple cider, right? Grape juice, got to check them, make sure there's not any fermentation. Malt beverages, MSG, often extracted from autolyzed yeast extract or from wheat. OXO cubes, right? Everybody love those, those cubes to cook with. Pretzels, sake, sourdough or sake, sourdough bread, wine, liquor, root beer. canned or bottled juices, okay, ginger ales, citric acid. This used to be from citric juice naturally, but now it's made from fermented corn. So anything got citric acid, you're gonna have to remove. All right. So all these are different ingredients, names for fermentation within these products. So with your wine, because we supposed to drink, wine on this day, you have your organic. You want to make sure you get organic grapes, okay? Grapes with seeds in them if you can, right? This is what you are aiming for. Because Genesis 1 verse 29 says, and Elohim said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, and which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat or for food. So y'all see that? So wine or the grapes, the blood of the grapes, or grape juice, you want to make sure it's coming from real grapes if you can, and not the GMOs. There are great benefits to grapes, maintain cholesterol levels, they maintain heart health, cures digestive and bowel disorders. It also boosts up your immunity, delays aging, it prevents cancer, it relieves debilitating headaches, improves metabolism, and maintains bone strength and instant energy booster, and removes toxins from your body, right? So making sure you get your alkaline or real, natural fruits. Now, also, again, we talked about these wines that are, prepared for Passover, made for Passover. Many people use Morgan David, Manischewitz, and these different brands here. Now, I'm not going to tell you to use it or don't use it. I'll let you do your research. You can go to kbmodiagnostics.com, and you can check for the ingredients in the process to see is this actually, appropriate and acceptable to use for the Passover and the 7 days unleavened bread. So you can check out also allergydetails.com for yeast allergy foods that contain yeast also. You can use that to check. And then again, for Morgan David and these wines that say they are kosher, you can go to barnivore.com and you can check out the ingredients and how they say that they do the process, how this is kosher for Passover, and to see if it really is according to the scriptures. All right. Another yeast or fermentation or fermentive agent is what we call uncapped honey or fermenting in the comb. To produce honey, bees collect nectar from flowers and add enzymes from their honey stomachs. And once the mixture is stored in the cells, the bees fan it with their wings until it dehydrates to a moisture content of about 16 to 18.5%. If the moisture content is higher than that, the bees simply won't cap it. If cold weather arrives before the honey is capped, it will sit open in the hive and may eventually ferment. Fermentation is the process of changing carbohydrates to ethanol and carbon dioxide. Fermentation in honey is no different than the process used in brewing alcoholic beverages. The yeast that causes this biological process are found naturally in the environment and are called wild yeast. Okay. The alcoholic content of fermented honey is not high, perhaps 1 or 2%, but knowing what to do with it is problematic. Now we see in Wa'ikra in Leviticus chapter 2, verse 11, it says, no meat offering which you shall bring unto Yahuwah shall be made with leaven, for ye shall burn no leaven, right, nor any honey in any offering of Yahuwah made by fire. Okay. So you got to get the honey out of your house, right? Any leavening agents for active fermenting or fermentation, again, it cannot be in your dwellings, right? So you can't use it for your food, you can't have it in your household. All right. Some more foods that contain yeast. Now we have cheese. Cheese is all kinds. Definitely you have to get up out of your house. Cheeses must be removed because some of the yeast in it that causes the cheese to spoil, or whatever the case might be. Also, dry fruits such as apricots or mangoes or dates, raisins. What else? Cranberries, figs. Those also have to be removed because there's a certain spoilage. And when the fruit starts to break down, what happens is the natural yeast that occurs in the atmosphere falls on the sugars. The yeast is attracted to the sugars in the milk, the sugars in the fruits. Those sugars, the yeast goes into that and it uses it as fruit and it turns it into alcohol or it ferments it, right? And as it feeds on the sugar from these things, there's a little bit of fermentation that starts to happen when you dry fruits. So this is why dry fruits you have to remove. There's also flavor enhancers, usually MSG, though it may also be yeast extract. Check that out. Such as other flavor enhancers on your chips, peanuts, and whatnot, certain jams and jellies. If you don't make it yourself using just plain sugar and boils your fruit down, more than likely the ones you buy at the store might have some type of fermentation in the process and preservatives. All right. Also, you have to look for lactic acids, generally made from fermented corn or potatoes. MSG produced from fermentation of starch or sugar. Okay. So this is also a main reason why Yah wanted us to separate from all the other nations as well, right? Because they put all kind of these things in their products and stuff like that, right? Mushrooms, raisins, even aged meats such as salami, wrapped on the plastic, thing in your pantry or refrigerator. And looking at all these things, it makes you think, you know, there's some of the things that we've used before, and you have to replace it with other things as a whole during this week, right? So you really gotta really search out everything. Your black teas, you gotta check the ingredients: malted barley, flour, preserved or pickled foods, right? The fermentation, the vinegar, and all that. Soy sauces, definitely hot sauces, ketchup, anything with vinegar, and foods containing vinegar, such as olives, mustard, etc. Miso, tamari, tempeh, yeast, extract, autolyzed or hydrolyzed, any yeast spreads or yeast extract, bovril, synovis or marmite, oxo, promite, vegemite, okay? All these things. Okay, so vinegar is like spoiled wine or sour wine, and it's found in ketchups, mustards, barbecue sauces, hot sauces, and salsas, and other things as well. So these things have to be removed and put in a cool place, or a shed or something like that. You have plenty of time to prepare, so be wise about your shopping when you're shopping these past weeks. All right, filter ingredients out as you shop, checking out all the ingredients on the back of these products and so forth. Again, you can make your own hot sauces from scratch, you can use some peppers and water and blender and putting your seasonings and all that. You got to do everything from scratch during this time. Because a lot of these things that we talk about have, vinegar, fermentation, different things in them, which it's a no-go for these 7 days. All right. So this is your Passover cleaning guide for those who need a guide um, to help them through the process. Again, Passover is at sunset. Eat the Passover at sunset of unleavened bread. There's no work to be done the first day of unleavened bread. Okay, meaning no survival work, no occupation work. You can make the bread that you need, right? Cooking that type of stuff, but outside of that, there's no work. Preparation tips. Again, look at your ingredients. Start cleaning. You start cleaning now so you don't have to put it off and procrastinate and have too much to do when you get closer to the days and have a lot on your shoulders, right? Take the leaven out of your homes, out of your cars, out of your garages. Some people forget their garage is a part of the house. Um, Even make sure you might want to check your dust bags, empty out your vacuums and all that, right? Arrange storage away from home so there's nothing to waste. And so you need to, have this mindset for these 7 days to make sure all these things are out of your houses, out of your dwellings. Make sure you get your baking sodas out of the house. Sodium bicarbonate is one of these, names, for the active yeast. Okay, sodium bicarbonate, aka saleratus, potassium bicarbonate, aka potash, ammonium carbonate, aka Baker's ammonia, ammonium carbonate, aka hartshorn, baking powder, sourdough starters, yeast. These is another list. going over. You can, take screenshots, I guess, for this if you need to. Um, so you can go down the list when you're looking at your ingredients to know these are just another names for a list of potential leavening agents. All right. Um, but many are familiar with, like baking powder, baking soda, and barm. But ammonium phosphates and ammonium hydrogen carbonates and ammonium hydrogen phosphates, all these things are another names for yeast activators. All right. Beer for sure. Buttermilks, calcium carbonates, calcium hydrogens, bicarbonate ammonia, chlorine bread, calcium phosphates, cream or tartar, right? Tartar sauces, creaming processes, diacetyl tartaric acid esters or monos, and diglycerides, ammonium, hydrogen phosphate, potassium acid carbonates, potassium bitartrate. What else? We have powder baking ammonia, sodium acids, and sodium aluminum phosphates. Again, sodium bicarbonate, ginger beer, gluconodelta lactones, hartshorns, horn salt, hydrogen peroxide. All right. Monocalcium phosphates, pyrrolash phosphates, anything with phos in the name. Right. Uh, all these things you just want to get up out of your house. Make sure ain't none in your ingredients. Sodium bicarbonates again, sourdough starters, whipped creams. You know, the whipped creams you like put on your fruit, can't have that, right? Um, what else? Tempura, all these different things, all right? Now, your unleavened bread that you're making, right? You're gonna talk about that also. So you're gonna make your unleavened bread from scratch. You're gonna use flour. And the flour you want to use, particularly, you want to aim for barley, right? Because again, in the spring, a bead means barley, the first month of barley. So the harvest that is being used of the grain is the barley, right? Salt, you can use salt in making your bread, water, oil, all these things are fine in making your bread from scratch. And the reason why I say barley is when we read Exodus or Shemot chapter 9, verse 31, it says, and the flax and the barley was smitten, for the barley was in the ear, and the flax was bold, right? So this is what was being harvested at the time because it was this time in season to be harvested during the first month of Abib of Passover and unleavened bread. Verse 32 says, but the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were not grown up, but it wasn't time for the wheat harvest yet. All right. So the grain they used was barley because the wheat was not ready to be harvested. Verse 33 says, and Moses went out of the city from Pharaoh and spread abroad his hands unto Yahuah, and the thunders and hail ceased, and his rain was not poured upon the earth. So this is why you want to aim for barley, but if you have to get wheat or a different flour, then do the best that you can with the resources you have. Other ways to eat unleavened bread where you can spice it up, you can do sweet unleavened bread, fried bread. And they made these sweet breads. You look at First Ezra's 1:19 through 20. And these are different ways that you can mix it up if you don't want to eat the same, bread every day. All right. First Ezra's 1:19 says, so the children of Israel which were present held the Passover at that time and the feast of sweet bread for 7 days. And such a Passover was not kept in Israel since the time of the prophet Samuel. Yeah, all the kings of Israel held not such a Passover as Josiah's, and the priests and the Levites and the Yahudim, the Jews, held with all Yasharah Israel that were found dwelling at Jerusalem. All right. So yeah, so you can mix it up. Also, if you want to do Passover and you do tacos, right? You can have tacos for Pesach. You got your roasted lamb, that's carne asada meat. You got your unleavened bread, tortilla flats, you know what I'm saying, that you make, and you put your bitter herbs, your carne asada, and your salsa, your pico de gallo, with your, this bitter herbs and bitter, bon appetit. You got you some tacos, and you doing the Passover, right? So this is just the other ways you can do it as well. Now, your Passover preparedness, you know, for many people, you may have people who are vegans out here and they don't eat meat, right? But if you're an Israelite or you're a covenant keeper, a commandment keeper of Yahuah Elohim, on this day you're not a vegan, right? On this day you eating some good old lamb because the Elohim of Israel, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim that you serve and the Mashiach serves, told us to what? That we are to eat a lamb, right, on the day of Passover, or the day of the night of unleavened bread. Okay, so this day you will have to eat meat. And now, for those that may have questions about getting meat, we're gonna look at that as well. Now, you want to make sure you get some organic meat, all right, not GMO or where they have 3D printing meat now. All kind of crazy stuff going on today, but we'll make sure you get organic lamb, non-GMO. I would suggest if you don't have an Israelite, you know, um, butcher or someone who sells, meat and so forth like that. If the closest thing, other alternative that you have is the halal, if possible, unless you can get kosher acceptableness with the law of Elohim. Now, depending on how this animal was sacrificed, is the very, very key because we're not supposed to eat meats or animals who have been tortured and harmed or roadkill or nothing like that. Okay. So halal and kosher meats are the most preferable if you don't do it, if you don't have your own farm and have your own butchers. Okay. Because halal is supposed to be in sync with the law of Elohim that he gave Moses, and kosher as well, to where the meat or the lamb or the animal meat doesn't have hormones in it that is not healthy because of fear, because of torture and torment, because that goes into the actual meat, those hormones. And if you eat that thing, that stuff, you are what you eat. So it starts to have a play on your body, right? So you want to make sure that when you eat meats, that it comes from, you know, either Israelite who knows how to do it properly, or halal or kosher places who are in line with the Torah. All right, or how they butcher their meat or slaughter their animals. Leviticus 17, we're gonna look at that real quick. Leviticus 17:13 says, and any man from the children of Israel or from the strangers who sojourn among you, who hunts and catches any beast or bird which is eaten, shall pour out its blood and cover it with dust. All right. So you're supposed to pour the blood out, can't eat the blood. Leviticus 17:14 says, for this the life of all flesh. Its blood is for its life. And I said to the children of Israel, do not eat the blood of any flesh, for the life of all flesh is blood. Anyone eating it is cut off. Okay? So you cannot eat blood, you be cut off from the land of the living. All right, those in covenant with Elohim. Leviticus 17:15 says, and any being who eats a carcass or what was torn by a beast, roadkill, right? Be he a native or a stranger, he shall wash his garments and bathe in water and shall be unclean until evening. Then he shall be clean. All right. So you want to stay away from roadkill, anything died of itself or was torn by a wild animal or something like that. That can't be your food source. Okay. You give it to the Gentiles, but you can't eat it if you are in covenant with Yahuwah Elohim. Leviticus 17:16 says, and if he does not wash or bathe his body, then he shall bear his iniquity, his sin, his crookedness. All right. So again, concerning the lamb, it's obvious many of us can't go out and get a whole lamb because there's only one person in the house. So you get some lamb, right? You don't just get you don't need to get a whole lamb either if it's just you. But again, if you have to buy, I recommend you go to an Israelite farmer who raises us lambs and keeps the Torah concerning the meat process. Or if you have to go to a Jewish place, right, that do the kosher laws and line in the sync, if it's in sync with Torah, buy a lamb from them. Or is it an Islamic place that, keeps the halal laws concerning meat, you could buy a lamb from them if it's in line with Torah. So that's probably your first three options. I'll recommend because that way it's killed properly, and there's some more details behind that, like I was talking about the hormones and so forth when it's not done properly. But for the most part, That's the best, you can do, especially those that are still in captivity. Um, those are your best options. At least there's the process of draining of the blood from the animal, and almost completely of the blood of the animal is out of the meat to the point that the animal has nothing in there that you can visually see. As far as the Jewish part, again, it's kind of tricky because they drain the blood, but in many cases the animal is dramatized to a large degree, right? The Islamic way, they choose not to cause any trauma to the animal. Okay. And the reason why I'm saying this again is because I usually show a video of what the meat even looks like when a animal's been traumatized. You can see the meat that people that butcher and eat and what it actually does. All right, but I didn't have time to put it in today. But yeah, so many people are eating this type of stuff half the time, and the animal is traumatized, and sometimes the animal suffers before it's killed, and all the hormones in that animal is released through fear throughout the whole animal, and it defiles that animal. And when you eat this, the hormones stay in the animal and causes damage to our own bodies. So the Most High has a way that you're not, going to find in the Torah, but you will find it. Um, in the Mishnah or so forth, where it tells you how to slaughter the animal. Even Enoch, the book of Enoch tells you how to slaughter an animal as well. So that's why sometimes you have to read outside of just the first five books of the Torah, because Enoch goes into details about these type of things that the first five books don't go into detail about. The animals has to be laid down. Their legs are supposed to be tied, you know, together, and it's supposed to be calm. The animal's supposed to be calm. It's supposed to be at rest, where there's no fear in the animal. And then you would take the animal's life, and then you would speak the words of the Most High, and then you would thank the Most High for the animal, and you would pray over it, and you take the life of the animal. And it's a quick cut, right? And when you cut it, you drain the blood from the body, and there's a little bit more to that. I don't have time to go over that today. But if you can find a halal market or store or a kosher store, and then the farmers market, I guess, will be the next best thing. Usually they have halal spots, but you can go in there and ask them, do they have halal meat? And they will provide that if they do. And if you know an Akron or Kotzi that provides lambs for Passover as well, definitely go to them and share with your brother. All right. Next thing we have unleavened bread, and we're supposed to eat the Passover is the bitter herbs. Okay. So we gotta make sure we got those bitter herbs. While bitterness is often perceived as unpleasant, the interaction between bitter constituents in food and our bitter taste receptors stimulate the production of gastric acid in the stomach. This helps prime the stomach for the food it is about to encounter. So bitter foods and herbs help to stimulate digestive juices and support food digestion, says professional dietitian Nicole Dube of Halifax, NS. In Exodus 12, verse 8, it says, "And they shall eat the flesh on that night, roasted in fire with unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs shall they eat it." Okay. Do not eat of it raw, nor boil it at all with water, but roast it in fire, his head with his legs and in its inward parts. All right. So these are different bitter herbs you can use. Again, you got your parsley, you got your pili pili or your peppers, right? You have your sprouts, your greens, kale, cabbage, you know, chard, um, your oregano, ginger, you know, all these are different bitter herbs you can use or you can add to your recipe and make dishes out of, right? Bitter foods help stimulate our taste receptors on the tongue, which subsequently stimulates the enzyme production and bowel flow, right? So the better your food is digested, the more nutrients you will absorb from your food. So it doesn't matter what you eat. If you can't absorb it, it won't be of much benefit to you. Dube often recommends eating a dandelion salad for people with digestive problems, help your digestive flow. All right. But yeah, so these things help you get the right nutrients and all the things that your body's supposed to absorb. Because when if it can't absorb the good food you're putting in your body, then it's not really of good use for your body to function. Bitter roots and veggies contain fiber to help sweet wastes through the digestive tract. Bitter foods also contain sulfur-based compounds which support the natural detoxification pathways in the liver, helping it to do what it is meant to do, which is keep your body clean and clear. Swedish bitters, another natural bitter herb supplement. Swedish bitters can be a useful part of your candida treatment by increasing the production of digestive enzymes like hydrochloric acid. They improve your digestion and help to raise the acidity of your intestines. The candida yeast needs an alkaline environment to switch it to its fungal form and spread around your body. So this extra acidity helps to rebalance your gut flora. There are a variety of other benefits from taking Swedish bitters. Swedish bitters, in particular, the positive effect on your liver and immune system. You can take Swedish bitters before, during, and after your candida treatment, and they are an excellent way to maintain a healthy digestive system. How do Swedish bitters help with candida? Well, the gut has a very delicate balance of microorganisms within it, including helpful bacteria and yeast. Candida is one such yeast, and in a healthy digestive system, it naturally lives in the large intestine and has positive benefits for the body. However, problems arise when we upset the balance. The healthy bacteria must be in balance with the yeast, else candida overgrowth. Other dietary guidelines, bitter foods can be used by those with excess overweight or hot or much mucus in their bodies, right? Bitter foods reduce mucus in the body and draw away excess toxins, both of which candida thrives in. Now we know Dr. Seavey tells you the main cancer causing thing, right, is mucus, right? So you definitely want to reduce the mucus within your body. Bitter foods include bitter gourd, endive lettuce, and bitter herbs, right? And which kill the yeast, right? So bitter herbs kill the yeast in your body. So bitter foods should only be used in very small amounts by those that are underweight because of their strong reducing and detoxifying qualities. All right. For those that may be first time hearing this lesson, there's still some other regulations also, which we're gonna get into next Shabbat, because these are all again regulations and certain for to partake of the Pesach, because this is not a feast day to everybody, anybody you could invite. This is actual a very serious initiation into the covenant of Mashiach. This is not like the other feast days where you can invite anybody, people that may not know Yahuwah for the first time. They're being shown, the Most High's feast and stuff. This is not that type of feast. These are for people who know Yah, um, that have decided to come into covenant with Elohim to partake in. If they're not that and they haven't fulfilled the prerequisites that's required to partake of Pesach, they cannot partake of Pesach. Those that don't know, next week we'll get into more of what those prerequisites are. We're gonna pick up and go through more of the rules and regulations of Passover, and even revelations and mysteries concerning Pesach as we approach this set apart feast day. Um, but I just wanted to do a review to get our minds and our hearts prepared, start preparing for those who like to wait last minute and want to be under too much pressure. Get your house in order, do your spring cleaning so there's no yeast fermentation within your bodies or your temples and your household. And with that being said, family, any questions pertaining to the lesson? Any questions?
And okay, for the halal meat,
Mhm.
so we just get, I mean, you saying just get a lamb, but isn't a lamb supposed to be killed on the same day that you eat it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If I'm saying we're keeping it as a memorial, as you said, in captivity. How do you keep it? And I'm saying if you don't know or have your own uh if you don't have your own farm or your own sheep or you don't know any Israelites who have these things, because there are Israelites in what we call the land of captivity, America, that has this. They even sell Passover lambs, you know, and have it shipped to you and everything, depending what state you are in and so forth. But there's Israelites that's doing that. But if you not in those areas, or you don't know or have those connections, then your other option to be able to celebrate the feast as a memorial in captivity is this Hallel. You can talk to the butcher in advance if you want to know, you know, other information, or however you want to do as far as when, you know, they got the meat or so forth. But these are just the other ways I'm saying, if you don't have the the way that I initially gave, as far as having your own sheep or so forth, for people that do, that's Israelites, that you can use as another option to be able to keep the feast as a memorial. And again, we keeping the feast as a memorial, understanding the lamb representing Mashiach. Many of you aren't putting blood on your doorposts either, according to, you know, the order of the priests and so forth, and how that would be prepared and all that. So again, we keep it as a memorial, understanding the Mashiach was the true lamb, and his blood that made atonement for us and so forth, to cover us and wash our sins away and to bring us back unto the Most High. Right. So keep that in mind.
Also is like some of the in those markets, do they pray over the meat?
They may not. In Second Corinthians, though, Shaul says don't ask questions concerning about that, because if it's a clean animal Yahuah created, we don't care who prayed over it. It's good according to Torah, as long as it's prepared or slaughtered correctly. So we don't ask if it's been sacrificed to deities or gods or prayed to some people. It doesn't matter. You can look that up in Corinthians. I think it's in Second Corinthians. It talks about that. For conscience sake, don't ask, because we don't eat any animals unto any other powers or any other mighty ones. We eat it unto Elohim, Yahuwah. King.
Can.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was gonna ask about the the same day thing. Well, it was kind of on my mind too. So what if actually find anything that day that was basically killed that day, and we actually choose not to actually eat you know eat the meat. Well, what do you think? Do you think that's a bad thing, or what
Mm.
would you say about that?
Yeah, I would say, even if you can't find a lamb, again, you're keeping it as a memorial. You know, there's Levitical orders and everything that also come with the Passover. There's sacrifices that's done on Passover, and you know, 3 times throughout the day, certain sacrifices that was done. But we're not doing that in the Levitical order. We're keeping the Passover under the order of Melchizedek priesthood. So certain ordinances in that way, that the Levites was over and did, we can't do today, because the Levites they haven't been reinstated to be able to do such things. You get what I'm saying? So, what you can do in the best of your ability, if you know a place that has lamb, right? Like I told you, you can look up, research, markets, meat markets, halal meat markets, and so forth. And even if the lamb wasn't that day, if you're still able to partake and get lamb to be able to celebrate the feast as a memorial, do so. To say I'm not going to do it, you know what I'm saying, and not putting any efforts of to fulfill the instructions in your ability that you're able to do, that will be going against the instructions. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I wouldn't support nobody saying, because we didn't find somebody that had a lamb that day. Because technically you're supposed to, again, if you have your own sheep, you would have the 10th day pick the sheep, and you've been expecting it to the 14th day. You know what I'm saying? So again, I'm telling y'all, if y'all not doing it like that, these are the other options you can do, and these options are there for y'all. And you just gotta research. You gotta, look up your meat mark, just like you look up anything else you want. You looking for that, you put some effort try to find, hey, I'm looking for this. I'm going on the internet, I'm looking for, you know what I'm saying? Because it's something you want. So I'm sure Yahuwah will lead whatever that's able in your situation to do. But you should put the efforts in trying to fulfill the commandment as much as you can in the best of your ability.
Got you. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay. Everybody else good? Any other questions? Everybody good then, huh? All right. All right. No questions. My hearts and minds are clear. We go ahead and pray on out. Baruch atah Yahuwah. Blessed be your name, Father Yah. Total Rabbi Yah for the word that gone forth today, O Yahuwah. But we just pray these words seep deep down in our hearts, Almighty Elohim, that it may become one in us, O Yahuwah, that we may walk in your ways, perform your works and your righteous instructions, Almighty Elohim, that we may embody your word, O Yahuwah, and that it become one in us, Almighty Yah. We just pray, Father Yah, that you continue to perfect us, continue to fill us up with your spirit, O Yahuwah, that we may be observing and look narrowly upon your ways, O Yahuwah, and your ways concerning our lives, Almighty Elohim, that we are not missing the mark, Almighty Yah, but that we're aiming and desiring to obey you in your word, and Father, and be always found doing that which is well pleasing in your sight, in your eyes, and not our own, Almighty Yah. We just pray you continue to open our eyes to see, open our ears to receive your word, O Yahuwah, and that our hearts be pliable, Father Yah, that your word could be sown on good ground to produce your fruit of righteousness that you are desiring from us as your people, O Yahuwah, as the plants you have planted, Almighty Elohim, to grow and blossom, become the beautiful trees of righteousness that you want us to be, Father Yah. Father, we just pray for everyone on the line today, Father, that you continue to cover them, protect them, keep them safe in your hands, O Yahuwah. Continue to lead us and guide us in the path that you have us to go, Yahuwah. We just pray as we depart from this place, Father, that your mighty Melachim continue to surround us and protect us from anything seen and unseen dangers, and that your force field and shield will surround us, protecting us from any carnal or spiritual attacks from the enemy, Almighty Elohim. We just pray, Father, that your grace and your favor will be with us and go before us, Almighty Yah, and that you continue to help us to grow and walk tamim or perfect before you, lacking nothing for our destinies, O Yahuwah. That we be your brides without spot, without blemish, and that we prepare our hearts, Father Yah, even to come before you on the set apart appointed times that are approaching, O Yahuwah, that we would constantly, walk circumspectly, examining ourselves and making sure that, our hearts are right. If there be any leaven in us that is not of you, that we root it out. Any things we need to go make right with brothers or sisters we may have offended or did anything against, that we would go make these things right, Father, that our hearts will be pure before you, Almighty Elohim, and that we continue to walk in the essence that you purpose for us to walk in, Abba. Father, we love you, we praise you, we just pray your will be done on earth as it is in Shemayim forevermore. In Yahushua Mashiach's name. Baruch atah Yahuwah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Amen. Amen. All right, family. Until next time, y'all be blessed. Enjoy the rest of your Shabbat. Much love and Shabbat Shalom.
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 All right.